What the? Robin looked around like a madman, observing the changes that were still occurring in his soul domain. Then finally he raised his tiny hands and began to turn it over as if he was seeing it for the first time. This is my primal soul. All the soul force that I had collected since I was born was transformed to form this world within my soul domain and left the primal soul to be completely naked. But why do I feel that my bare primal soul is now much stronger than my full soul force before the incident? What exactly happened? After an unknown period of time, Robin forced himself to move and finally landed on the newly found ground of his soul domain that took shape shortly after his spiritual body exploded. A few moments ago, the soul domain was a completely featureless milky white sphere with no ceiling or ground in sight. But now the situation is different. Then he extended his hand towards the ground and took a handful of dirt and began to examine it. After a few minutes, he furrowed his eyebrows slightly. This is pure soul force. Then he walked towards the lake and examined the water, and towards the forest and examined its fruits, and every time he found the same expected result. Everything in this bizarre soul world was made of pure soul force. Theoretically, I can absorb everything here to cover my primal soul with soul force once more. Doesn't this mean that I will gain the same soul force as before and my soul domain will return to its original state? What was the point of all this then? Robin looked around in wonder. There is no need to absorb that energy again for now. For some reason, I feel that my soul force is much stronger than before. I will leave it like this until I need it one day. As long as it is in my soul domain, it will not go anywhere anyway. Robin showed a big smile as he looked around. This unique world in his view now became a reserve of soul domain, ready to be consumed in case he needed urgent treatment. At least that's all this new world represents now until he finds a real use later. It is unreasonable that such a magnificent soul world would only be useful in treating soul wounds. There has to be some kind of usage he doesn't know yet. Then he finally turned his gaze to the only thing that stayed the same within his soul domain, the dark thundercloud containing the power of Hoffenheim, and began to advance towards it again. The cloud was now approximately 20% of its main size, but nevertheless, it still covered a significant portion of the soul domain, and it seemed as if it was ready to destroy this newly found soul world at any moment. Why would he absorb his own soul force again if this intruding dark thundercloud was still there? He managed to absorb 80% during the years of his seclusion. He will probably need more than a year of complete seclusion to absorb the rest, and when he is finished with it, his soul body will return to being gigantic again, and even if it does not reach its previous height, it will not be very far. Robin raised his hands slightly and gave the order. Many mini vortexes began to emerge from the cloud again and connect with his chubby soul body, ready to transform the power of that dark thundercloud to be his own once more. But something strange happened this time. Ha! The dark cloud began to diminish at a tremendous speed. 20%, 15%, 10%, 5%. This wasn't a precise long-term absorption method anymore. It looked like a whale opening its mouth to swallow a small bucket of water. In the blink of an eye, the massive dark thundercloud disappeared from sight. Even after the dark cloud thundercloud, Robin continued to look at where Iz was with his mouth open. Everything happened so quickly that he did not have enough time to stop the process even if he wanted to. Once again, he started turning his hands and feet around and looked at them to find the changes that had occurred to his soul body. But there was no significant change. The same chubby silver soul body was still there, or perhaps it had increased in length by a few millimeters this time. It is worth noting that the trees in soul domain became taller, the lake became wider, and even the mountains soared in height. Robin continued to look around him as if he were a stranger in a foreign land. Everything that was happening was abnormal to him. No one on any planet he went to had ever experienced anything like this. At least nothing like this was mentioned in any manuscript. Of course, the existence of the soul domain itself was unknown to him until he clashed with Hoffenheim, but he had entered the Hoffenheim soul domain before and found nothing close to that. One more thing to investigate. Robin finally sighed and shook his head. The burden had become too heavy. Although he had not kept tracking of time and had completely surrendered to the soul-filling technique since he entered the soul domain, It had certainly been several months since he fainted. Every passing day brought him closer and closer to the Nahari War, the fateful war in which he would fulfill his promise, the war in which he had to save his son, the war for which he prepared nothing worthy yet. If he made a list of things that he had to spend time researching in order to increase the power of the true beginning empire as quickly as possible, this list would not end, so he would have to choose a few things from it and leave the rest aside until he had some free time. Of course he has to survive the war and had free time in the first place. After one last look around, Robin gave a long sigh, then closed his eyes and decided to leave the soul domain. The mystery here would have to continue until fate allowed it. Immediately after Robin's consciousness left the soul domain, he returned to control of his body and tried to move. The difference was that this time he finally succeeded. "Dad, you are awake?" Zara helped her adoptive father sit down and finally brought him some real food and drink and began feeding him, which aroused the curiosity of the guards outside. When they confirmed from Zara that His Excellency had finally awakened, news began to spread quickly that His Excellency had finally opened his eyes, spreading a wave of celebration and anticipation at the same time throughout planet Greenland. As for Robin, he spent the first few hours looking like he was trying to get used to his body again, and even he himself was surprised and asked Zara, "Arg, why do I feel like I've been sleeping for years?" "Because that's exactly what happened. You have been in this state for 2 years now." Zara shook her head gently and answered, but her features could not hide some concern. 2 years? What happened to the war? Robin felt like he was about to faint again when he heard Zara's response. He's been lying in this bed for 2 years? It seemed like 2 or 3 months of rest instead. If this were true, then the time he spent inside the soul domain absorbing that thundercloud passed in the blink of an eye. Was he so completely focused on the absorption process that he forgot about time? "You have been in this state for 2 whole years. You scared us silly." Zara nodded with watery eyes. The past 2 years have put a lot of psychological pressure on her. "But how? There's no way I've spent 2 full years in the soul domain." Robin wondered in a low voice as he straightened his seat. Even if he forgot the passage of time during the absorption process, in the end, he only absorbed about 30% of the thundercloud before his soul body collapsed, and it is impossible for him to have spent 2 years absorbing only 30%. Then he began to slowly rub his forehead, trying to recall what happened after his battle against the warlords. Perhaps he would find the answer. But Zara thought he was asking her, so she put her hand on her chin a little, arranging the answer, and then she spoke. I don't know what was happening with you exactly, but I was here with you since the day after you fell, and I noticed all the changes that happened to you, and this is the sequence of events. First, since you fell in battle, you fell into a complete coma, where only the important vital processes in your body were being carried out, but with great difficulty, and you remained in this state for about 7 months. After that, I felt you trying to do something with your energy gathering center. But you were very weak at that time, so I tried to help and began sending my own energy there as well, although I was terrified when I found your body wavering as if you were suffering. When I saw you still persevering in pumping energy there, I kept helping you all the time, and you remained in this state for about 2 months. Then she paused for a moment before adding, After that phase ended, many changes occurred in your energy gathering center, and I saw you sweating, but I did not know how to help. But the good thing is that after several days, your body returned to stability and you returned to consuming a lot of energy, so I produced pumping even more energy with the help of an energy pearl this time, and you remained in this state for a year, that is, until about 2 months ago. Then your crazy energy consumption stopped completely and all the vital processes in your body returned to normal, but you remained unconscious. Until you finally opened your eyes today. Robin raised his eyebrows slightly as he looked at Zara. Although her words seemed vague, he understood everything. The part he focused on the most was that his energy consumption had calmed down 2 months ago already. So he quickly passed his soul sense at his energy gathering center before showing a big smile. Everything there had returned to normal there. According to Zara, repairing the solid energy foundations from number 1 to number 10 took 2 months, while repairing the solid energy foundations from number 11 to number 30 took a whole year. But his smile quickly disappeared and his features turned into shock when he remembered something. His solid energy foundations from 20 to 30 should have completely disappeared, but now they are back as if nothing had happened. The foundation modification technique was not designed to work like this. Even if a truth user like him had created it, it was still an initial technique created for the purpose of repairing the errors of past cultivation, but building the entire sagehood cultivation realm from scratch in 1 year.
Impossible.
Secondly, how did this happen automatically? The technique requires tremendous concentration and tremendous endurance. This was evident when Robin struggled to use it to repair the first 10 solid energy foundations. He remained conscious and internally screaming all the time for 2 months. It was like a person holding a knife and using it to carve words into his own skin and flesh. But when the technique began to touch the solid energy foundation number 11, it seemed as if that knife had turned into a pen, and another person grabbed this pen and began using it easily and skillfully. Robin did not have to do anything but watch. He was so out of work that he went to deal with the thundercloud in his soul domain out of boredom. Robin sighed and shook his head. Then a heartfelt smile returned to his lips. There were many mysteries regarding the master law of truth for him to discover, but at least this time he received help from fate and his bad luck did not interfere again. The fractures in his energy gathering center were a huge burden occupying his mind. Now the state of his energy gathering center has returned to be as it was before the battle. Even better. Even better. Robin furrowed his eyebrows slightly when he felt this point and tried activating the absolute natural energy absorption technique. And to his surprise, level 31 slowly began to form. What the? Robin raised his eyebrows again. Assuming that this was impossible without breaking through to the 3rd level of the master law of truth. Then Robin thought of something and activated the Eye of Truth. His eyes began to glow golden and a thin layer of shimmering glow covered his entire body. Then the smile quickly returned to his face. He was now seeing what he had never seen before. All the laws surrounding him all the way to the 4th stage were exposed before him like an open book. His master law of truth has finally reached the 3rd stage. Robin almost jumped off his bed with joy. He no longer remembers how many years had passed since he was able to reach the 2nd stage of truth. He did not think that he would reach the 3rd stage by chance. But he quickly calmed down. Isn't this normal? What exactly is space-time? The master law of truth develops when Robin's understanding of the truths of the universe around him increases. If the law of truth does not develop to the 3rd stage after discovering and adapting another master law, then when will it develop? Not even mentioning the 3rd stage, discovering the master law of spacetime would undoubtedly help him reach even the 4th level of the master law of truth later on. Robin felt a slight tremor and the hair on his body began to stand up lightly as he thought about it. But his features took a turn for the worse again and he looked at Zara quickly. Where are your brothers? What happened to the war in the past 2 years? Treefather Hoffenheim went crazy after you destroyed his warlords. Within 1 week, he gathered an army of tens of millions of buds and sent them here to take revenge on you. But there were already several legions here and my brothers and the rest of the generals were able to repel the attack. That huge battle continued for more than a month, after which a comprehensive counterattack began against the Tree Father, in which all of your 10 legions participated, and they returned to forcefully attack the Tree Father Hoffenheim's lands, but this time without any kind of self-restraint. During the 2 years, they crammed the Tree Father and all his remaining buds into a small area around his real body, and now the war is still going on there. I heard that tens or even hundreds of thousands of bodies fall there every day without a chance to rest between the 2 sides. My brothers come here every now and then to visit you, but they soon return to the war zone again. Then Zara seemed to remember something. Oh, there are a few bodies made of roots that tried to enter the tent from underground, but the arrays detected them and prevented them from penetrating the floor of the tent, so they tried to form those bodies around the tent. We didn't know what their intentions were, so I ordered the guards to destroy them on sight. One of them came more than once and said that he just wanted to talk to you, but we told him that you were in closed training and that he had to leave his name and retreat until you yourself came out of the tent. He actually retreated every time, but he refused to leave his name. Bodies from the roots? This reminds me of the incarnation of Hoffenheim. Is he trying to communicate with me to give up? Robin furrowed his eyebrows slightly, then thought about something and looked back at Zara. What about the rest of the Tree Fathers? There has been silence on the planet since that day. We had people monitoring all the borders around us, but there were no major movements. Uncle Billy communicates every few days via voice ring to check on you, and he recently told me that Tree Father Descartes seemed to have given up on the war. Although he still sent armies to stop Uncle Billy, the resistance was negligible compared to the past. So Uncle Billy was able to control a massive area of Father Tree Descartes with only the help of the 5th Legion. Tree Father Descartes. That Tree Father did not enter into a life-or-death war against us like Hoffenheim, but at the same time, he tasted part of our army's power through the 5th Legion. Perhaps we might have an opening there. Robin tapped his thigh a few times with his brows furrowed. Then he quickly stood up as if he was reminded of something. "Where is Jabba?" "Brother Jabba." "He." Zara furrowed her brows and looked down. Robin's heart pounded when he saw that reaction, and then he asked with an emotionless face, "Zara, just say it, is Jabba dead?" In fact, as soon as he remembered Jabba's appearance that day and asked about him, he was prepared to hear that he had died from his wounds. At that time, all of his blood vessels were destroyed, his bones diminished, and his flesh almost disappeared, turning him into a bile of bones in a bag of skin. Jabba's appearance at that time resembled someone who had been subjected to severe torture for thousands of years, and not someone who had been fighting for half an hour. No, of course not. Why would you say something so ominous? Brother Jabba is alive, but I don't know what to say. Zara waved her hand quickly, then looked back at the ground, then began to eat one of her nails, as if she were thinking seriously. As for Robin, he closed his eyes for a moment and let out a long sigh when he heard that Jabba was still alive. Even though his relationship with Jabba was not as strong as his relationship with Caesar, for example, he still held an extremely high place in his heart. As long as he is alive, nothing else matters. Just tell me what you know and I will arrange events my way. Robin reassured his adopted daughter. Okay, I will try. Even though I was not there that day, I will tell you what I heard from the rest. After the battle that day, everyone was busy trying to treat the injured, especially you and Jabba. Your situation was actually much easier. They just carried you and brought you to this tent, and then they started pumping life energy inside your body and treating your external wounds until I arrived the next day. However, Brother Jabba's situation was a little strange. Brother Jabba remained on his knees, with his eyes and mouth wide open as he looked at the sky with a wandering mind. Everyone thought that this was one of the symptoms of the technique he used, and they tried to pick him up and bring him to this tent with you. However, whenever anyone approached to lift Brother Jabba up, he would slightly wave his hand in a wow indicating rejection, or send some energy to sting the hand that was approaching him. Although he did not move a step or change his features, he clearly refused to move from his place. So the youth retreated at that time based on his desire and began sending life energy to his body from afar to support him. She paused for a few seconds and then added, "At this point, they thought that he was doing something to treat himself and that it wouldn't be long before Brother Jab began to cooperate, as he was conscious of his surroundings in the end, but that did not happen. After several days, the first Brother Caesar arrived and saw what was happening. Even though Brother Jabba was still covered in blood and dirt and his body looked like it was as if he was about to collapse, he was undoubtedly still conscious and didn't want to be moved. So Brother Caesar ordered that a tent be built around Jabba and not be disturbed again until he decided to move, and 3 sages from the Life Corps were appointed to accompany Jabba in the tent and supervise his physical needs from afar without disturbing him. Robin nodded a few times. If I were Caesar, I would do the same. Jabba is not dumb to know what is good for him. As long as he does not want to move, his will must be respected. So what happened next? Brother Jabba remained in this strange state for an additional 2 months. Then one day he suddenly got up and went out and took a bath, then ate a large feast with the officers of the 6th Legion and came to check on you. Robin raised his eyebrows and spoke with a smile. That's perfect. Why were you hesitating to tell me then? Robin was very happy right now. After Zara's introduction at first, he was ready to hear that his disciple had died or completely lost his mind. I was hesitant for 2 reasons. The first is that after he visited you that day, he returned to his tent and did not leave after that. He hasn't left his tent in about 20 months? Robin narrowed his eyebrows slightly. This was indeed a cause for concern. Indeed, he asked the sages of the Life Corps to leave so that he could be completely alone. and currently we only know that he is still in the tent through the dishes that come out of his tent empty after they enter full. Zara nodded. General Jabba's condition was a cause for confusion and concern among everyone, especially among the 6th Legion. Some even resembled what he did to what their emperor did sometimes. What is the second reason? Robin tapped his chin and asked. The second reason, his appearance when he came out that day was... Zara seemed like she was trying to choose her words very carefully. What was it? Robin furrowed his eyebrows. Was he still red like a demon or something? Maybe you should see it for yourself. Explaining won't help. Zara shook her head. Should I summon him for you? When he knows you are up, he will definitely leave his seclusion. There's no need, he might be something important in there. I'll go visit him. Robin spoke, then stood up with difficulty and leaned on Zara. Robin paused for a moment a step before the door of the tent. I know that showing gratitude between family members is unnecessary, but thank you. I know that the past 2 years have not been easy for you. What are you saying, Dad? You are always in seclusion or traveling, and I rarely see you. Staying by your side for 2 full years was a dream come true and not a burden at all. Zara's face warmed slightly and she hugged Robin's arm that was holding him tighter. When Robin heard Zara's words, he let out a long sigh and kissed Zara's forehead gently. Fate has not been kind to me since I decided to take this path, but it compensated me with all my luck in one fell swoop when it chose you to be my daughter. Zara did not say anything else after Robin's words. She just raised her head and looked at me with eyes filled with a layer of tears and a satisfied smile. What would 2 years of effort be in exchange for hearing that one sentence? Right after Robin left the tent, he found a few sages in full golden armor bowing before him, grinning. Then he saw a sea of men and women of the 6th Legion cheering towards him. The rumor of their emperor's rise had already spread throughout the camp, but seeing him walking among them had another weight. This was the person who saved their lives with a few waves of his legendary black spear. Robin continued on his way, leaning on Zara with one hand and waving to the members of the 6th Legion with the other hand until he reached another tent that was not far away. A tent that was set up in the same spot where General Jabba had the warlord almost crushed. Robin stood for a few more seconds in front of the tent, preparing himself psychologically for what he was about to see. Then finally he raised his hand from Zara and patted her to wait for him outside, then took a step forward. As soon as Robin entered, his eyes fell on a human young man who appeared to be in his 20s. The young man had long hair braided in the middle of his head and had shaved hair on both sides. His skin was not too dark or too white, and there was a tattoo extending along his neck. He was tall for a human male, but if he stood among the 6th Legion, he wouldn't stand out among them. His body was not too thin or muscular, but rather he looked well-balanced and pleasing to the eye. The young man was sitting on the ground in a meditative position and looking with eyes glowing green at his palm, which was dripping with blood on the floor of the tent. Jabba, is that you? Jabba? Robin narrowed his eyes and titled his head slightly as he studied the young man's features. In fact, there were no signs of resemblance between the handsome young man sitting on the ground in front of him and the Nahari giant General Jabba. Had Robin not entered the tent psychologically prepared that he was coming to visit Jabba, he would not have scrutinized his features and recognized him. Master, you are awake. Jabba quickly stood up with a big smile on his face at Robin's voice and almost jumped to hug his master. But he seemed to remember something, so he stood up again and gave a deep bow. Thank you. I will never forget your kindness as long as I live. Hurry and get up. What are you doing? Robin spoke unconsciously, but he did not move to pick up Jabba. He even forgot to ask him what happened to him. Only his eyes began to shine with a faint golden glow, trying to deduce anything from what he sees right now. If it were up to me, I would remain bowed before you for another 100 years, because thanks to you, I finally have When Jabba finally raised his back to look at his master's face, he screamed violently, then put both his hands over his eyes and quickly threw his head back. Jabba, are you okay? What's wrong with your eyes? Finally, Robin regained some of his focus, so he took a few steps quickly and went to check on his disciple. When Robin entered the tent, he saw Jabba's eyes glowing green. That glow reminded him of something for a moment, but he decided to ignore that possibility since it was almost non-existent.
I'm
Fine. I'm fine. Jabba began rubbing his eyes vigorously. The soul-piercing pain that suddenly attacked him made someone like him who had stepped on countless corpses scream like a little girl. At that moment, he felt as if someone had poured lava into his eyes. What was that? What happened to you? Robin asked again, his golden eyes still roaming over his student's body like crazy. No, not at all. The pain has subsided now. Perhaps my body has not yet become accustomed to the new capabilities of my eyes. Jabba slowly removed his hand from his eyes and tried to look at his teacher's face again. This time his eyes returned to normal and the green glow disappeared, and he finally could see his master's golden eyes that he had seen countless times before. He shook his head with a sarcastic smile when he made the connection. It seems there are a few things I'm not allowed to spy on. That terrifying pain that struck Jabba was when his fully activated eyes met the eyes of his master. And yet he was the one who fell in pain while his master did not even realize what had happened. Jabba, don't leave me guessing. What's going on with you? What's wrong with your eyes and why is your body like this? Did the Tree Father do something to you during the fight? Jabba smiled big when he heard Robin's questions. He looked like a little boy who had drawn a beautiful drawing and wanted to show it to his father for the first time. Please look into my eyes. With that, Jabba lowered his head slightly to look at Robin's chest and again activated the green glow in his eyes. Robin furrowed his eyebrows slightly at Jabba's actions, but nevertheless, he listened to what he was saying and began to examine his student's eyes. But soon he opened his eyes to the end and took a step back. Is this the initial eye of truth? He said it himself but still did not believe it. He heard the words he said and did not believe that he said them. The green glow coming from Jabba's eye now was filled with vague, featureless patterns. Although he could not extract a single specific pattern from it, this was not the first time he had seen these patterns. It is similar to the ones in his energy gathering center.
Impossible.
I passed on to you all my knowledge about the law of truth and taught you hundreds of minor and major heavenly laws over 20 years. And yet the truth did not choose you. Why now? Robin took another step and grabbed his student's head with both hands, his tone filled with panic and his eyes filled with shock, and even some remorse. Jabba turned off his eye of truth so he could look up to his master's face again. A satisfied smile spreading across his face. He knew why his teacher was acting this way. Not because he was afraid that someone would challenge his position, and he certainly was not afraid that someone would shake the history he had built. Jabba knew for sure that his master was panicked because he knew that choosing the truth had finally chosen him when it was too late. He finally got the master heavenly law of truth recognition after he built his pillars with the major heavenly law of gravity. Even if he could use the master law of truth now, it would be like using the fire path law to learn how to cook or dry his clothes faster, only as a side helpful law that supports his main one, which is gravity. He would never be able to follow this path to the end. He would forever be using the initial level of the eye of truth to see the first stage of the rest of the laws, and perhaps the second level if he put in some effort, but that's it. The matter was far easier to accept when the truth had not been acknowledging him in the first place. It could be said that it was the will of fate or that choosing Jabba from the beginning for this role was a wrong choice and that he was better suited to the position of a general or a leader, but now that the truth had chosen him, Robin felt that his disciple has missed on something really big. Jabba let out a long, satisfied sigh. There is no need to blame anyone for my late acquisition of the truth, Master, especially not yourself. You have given me all your experience and knowledge and have not been stingy in answering any question. I am the one who got tired of waiting because I thought that what I did not achieve in 20 a year will never come, and I chose to use the law of gravity to quickly strengthen myself. Secondly, isn't using the initial eye of truth also good? I now have the same ability as the first Heaven's Chosen who changed the structure of planet Nahari forever. He also used the law of truth too late and only possessed the initial eyes of truth throughout his short life. All my life I had heard about that entity and looked at him with reverence, but now I have the same power as him. Throughout the long history of the planet Nahari, there were only 2 natives who had this eye, and I am the third. Isn't this something to be proud of? And all of this is thanks to you, Master. Thanks to me? Robin shook his head with a sarcastic laugh. then found his way to one of the chairs in the tent and sat on it, feeling helpless. Sigh, if I hadn't chosen to start the war on planet Jura that day, you wouldn't have chosen to use the major heavenly law of gravity to break through the knighthood to help me. If I hadn't made you worry about me, you would have been now able to adopt the master law of truth as your foundation-building law. But unfortunately, this will not work now. Then Robin rested his head on his hand and started rubbing his forehead. This was really a problem. Even if the truth accepted Jabba, it would still be impossible to modify his foundations to use the master law of truth as the foundation-building law. Robin saw for himself how the patterns of truth despise any other patterns and turn them into nothingness once they approach them, so modifying Jabba's foundations is impossible. As for destroying his foundation entirely and starting over, theoretically this is possible, but according to the all-seeing God, this is also impossible. When he brought Caesar back to the age of 12, all of his foundations, the solid energy in Caesar's body, were consumed and he returned to being a mere mortal. However, the all-seeing God stressed that he must cultivate any law but within the path of fire. From this, it can be concluded that the patterns of the law are applied to the energy gathering center itself in some way, just as they are applied to the foundations. As for destroying the entire energy gathering center and starting over, this is simply a pipe dream. The energy gathering center can be considered an organ like the heart, lungs, etc. Destroying it means death. Robin experienced for himself what happened to his body when only its foundation was damaged. So why would it happen if the energy gathering center itself was destroyed? Jabba's look towards his master changed from enthusiasm and pride to overwhelming happiness. He knows that his teacher did not break his enthusiasm or be sad because he found acceptance of the truth. On the contrary, he knows that he is exhausting his brain by thinking now for his own benefit, to find a way to make him stronger and benefit more from the truth. Thinking about it, had his father ever thought so much for his sake before? Even though Robin is not good at articulating or revealing what is in his heart, he realizes that his master expresses his love and satisfaction with those around him in this way. So Jabba walked up to his teacher and sat in front of him, then patted his knee twice. Yes, my teacher, it is all thanks to you. Would I have been able to read all the techniques and keys about hundreds of heavenly laws if it weren't for you? Would I even have known about something called the law of truth at all? I don't regret that you started the war against planet Jura, and I don't regret that I built my knighthood pillars with the major heavenly law of gravity. Then he added without as much as stopping to breathe, if this war hadn't happened, how were you going to leave the planet Nahari and come to planet Greenland in order to increase the strength of your army? How would you make me a general of the 6th Legion, and how my men would respect me if I were not strong enough and used the law of gravity? Only by being on this planet and at the head of this legion, I got a chance to do my research and, of course, get the chance to see the embodiment of the law hovering in front of eyes in the sky and the cores of laws being formed and destroyed. Just because of this, I got the eye of the truth. If it weren't for all those events, I would still be in planet Nahari today chasing some low-life criminals. Robin raised his head slightly and looked at Jabba for a long time, then nodded a few times and sighed. In terms of natural talent, you are not worse than me, but there are many things you are better at than me, including your satisfaction with reality. You do not exhaust yourself by thinking about the impossible like me. Rather, you leave it aside and focus on the possible. This makes your outlook on current events ideal and gives you a better grasp on the situation and gives you the ability to make better decisions than me. This is something I envy you about. If you had accepted reality and built your knighthood pillars with some minor heavenly law when death approached you in that cave, we would not be here today. So thank you for exhausting your head with the impossible. Jabba laughed softly. Robin raised his eyebrows slightly upon hearing this before he started laughing as well. Then we both do what we do best. Help me strengthen this empire and I will help you research the impossible and find a way to make you use the master law of truth fully. How about that? Of course, I will help you strengthen this empire as much as I can. As long as this Jabba is still alive, I will make the true beginning empire control the entire young planet's domain. Jabba beat his chest and swore proudly. Excellent. Finally, I now have a partner to rely on. Robin laughed and clapped. Today was truly a cause for celebration. Just a short while ago, Robin was thinking about all the accumulated things that he had to research if he wanted to better understand what was going on around him. Things that only he could research because he had an eye for the truth. But that has changed now. Hey, what's up with that partner? Jabba waved his hand quickly, looking somewhat frightened. Everything I have is the product of your creation. I dare not take that title. I will forever remain your disciple. Robin smiled slightly when he heard this and leaned forward slightly and patted Jabba's shoulder twice proudly before leaning back in his chair. I see you were researching about something before I entered? Jabba scratched his head. Okay, this is embarrassing. I've spent the last few months staring at everything around me randomly. Robin laughed and shook his head. I understand. When I first got the eye of truth and saw those patterns, I was like a blind man who saw for the first time. Every day I burned something new and watched the patterns it would produce. It's fun, huh? Yes. This is the feeling. Jabba pointed at him and spoke excitedly. Of course I understand, but you have been here for more than 20 months, which is enough for now. I have many things that need to be researched and I did not know where to begin. Since you are eager to begin, I will give you a thing or two to try. But first, at this point, Robin stopped and pointed at Jabba. Tell me what happened to your body. Tell me what happened to your body. This isn't something I can say with a word or two. I'm afraid the explanation you are looking for is going to take quite a bit of your time. If you don't mind listening now, would you like some tea? I got a fine patch by chance during my time leading the 6th Legion. In front of Robin's question, Jabba smiled and did not answer immediately. Rather, he got up and went to one of the corners of his tent and brought some firewood. Then he brought the jug and quickly a small cloud formed above it and it began to rain drops of clear water. Then he dropped a few glowing green leaves into it. Then he asked while making the tea, not looking at Robin, Master, did you receive a report regarding the history of the cultivation techniques on the farm planet? Robin raised his eyebrows slightly. You know about the farm, but he didn't seem very surprised. Just a little bit I peppered him on with questions and made him talk. But there's no need to blame him, he didn't mean to reveal the secret. Jabba laughed slowly. Robin smiled when he heard this. Is it easy to make Amon talk? Amon is the non-crowned demon king at this moment. And this is not only due to his previous encounter with Robin. He made his way from just a high-level demon to one of the demon kings in a very short period of time, and the rest of the kings depended on him in external communication and politics almost entirely. How could Jabba make him speak his secrets with a few words? If it were that easy, Billy would have known what was happening a long time ago. Then Robin nodded twice. After his first meeting with Demon King Morin, emissaries from the demon army came to visit him more than once. Although they were not able to meet him due to his absence in the closed-door seclusion that lasted for almost 4 years, they left reports for him regarding everything that might interest him about the farm planet. May I ask what interested you most in the reports about the history of cultivation techniques in the farm planet? Jabba asked again before dropping a few more tea leaves into the fridge. Nothing very interesting, honestly. They use an internal energy system that is somewhat different from the one we use in planet Jura, but the main idea is the same, which is to use the laws to strengthen the energy gathering center and allow it to build more solid foundations. But it didn't come as a surprise as it is the same with the internal energy system in Greenland as well. In addition to this, they use certain techniques to strengthen their bodies and weapons and enlarge their bodies, but it is all empty talk and the use of external methods because the internal energy technique they use is full of loopholes. Did the report mention who invented this internal energy system technique on the farm planet? Jabba asked emotionlessly. Robin's smile grew, reaching ear to ear. So you also noticed? Jabba looked sideways at his master. Maybe. I honestly don't know if we're talking about the same topic here. Robin waved his hands and went back to leaning on the back of his chair. Then I will go along with you until I hear your opinion first. According to the history of the farm planet, there were humans living on it about 300,000 years ago. Under the pressure of the intense war that was raging on the planet at that time due to the large number of different races, one of the geniuses of the human race laid the foundations of the internal energy system, and thanks to him, the humans there got a chance to catch their breath and even control the situation, until the technique eventually spread and the rest of the races and began to cultivate it. At this point, the mortal war turned into a massacre of energy cultivators, and the first race to be annihilated was actually the human race. How ironic. Jabba nodded a few times as Robin finished speaking. Doesn't this remind you of something? According to the history of planet Greenland, the first to invent the internal energy training technique were humans before the technique leaked to the Treants, and according to the hidden history of planet Nahari, the humans were also the first race to obtain the internal energy training system before the first Heaven's Chosen came and invented the divine tattoo system so that they would be more suitable for the Nahari giants, and of course, there is no need to mention the race that discovered the internal energy system on the planet Jura. Go on. Robin nodded excitedly. If we take a step back and see the entire picture along the 4 planets, we will find that the internal energy training technique has always been the first thing that appears when it comes to energy cultivation, and we also find that it is humans who discover this technique every single time. Continue. Robin leaned forward again, all of his teeth now visible due to his wide smile. The Treants only exist on planet Greenland, the Nahari giants only exist on planet Nahari, and the half-humans exist only on planet Farm and planet Nahari. Humans are the only race that is present or were present at some point on the 4 planets, in addition to the fact that they are always the first to step towards the energy training path. Isn't it safe to say that if we select one race to be bet on being the chosen one, it will be the human race? At this point, Jabba stopped and looked at Robin out of the corner of his eye. Applause sounds. Excellent, wonderful. Robin started laughing loudly and clapping so hard that he almost lost feeling in his hands, before he leaned back on the back of his chair again and looked up at the tent. Ahaha! It's a nice feeling to find someone smart to talk to. You have thought about this before? At this point, Jabba raised his eyebrows in surprise. He thought it would take him a few hours to argue with his master until they finally reached a conclusion together. But it turned out that there was no need for that. Of course, I thought about the matter since I sat with Fugon and heard from him the cultivation history of planet Greenland. It might have been a coincidence on the planet Jura and the planet Nahari. After all, there are only humans on planet Jura, or at least that is what we see currently, although seeing all these intelligent races on all the other planets makes me doubt whether there are actually other intelligent races on the planet Jura at one point, but our human ancestors won the final war and exterminated them. I don't know. History does not mention anything like this. It is not unlikely that an extermination war actually occurred in Jura before the era of energy cultivation, which led to the annihilation of the rest of the races at the hands of humans, but it is just speculation at the end. Then he added with a wave of his hand, "But how can such a coincidence also be in planet Greenland? At this point, it is impossible not to notice it." So doubt began to enter my heart regarding the origins of the races, and then the report came from Farm Planet and it directly confirmed my doubt. Robin explained as he waved excitedly, "I don't know whether humans are a chosen race or something like that. After all, humans were either exterminated or enslaved on 3 out of 4 planets, but there is undoubtedly a connection between the origin of humans and the internal energy cultivation system. Then hear me out. Why don't we take this assumption of yours a step further?" Jabba poured the boiling tea into 2 cups and passed one to his teacher before sitting down in front of him again. If we said that the internal energy training system is the origin of all cultivation paths, this would not be an exaggeration at this point, right? But why are humans the ones who discover it every time? It is not as if there is a noticeable difference in intellect between humans and other intelligent creatures, and there are creatures who are better than humans in terms of contemplation and merging with nature, such as the Treants or the astral race. It would have been more logical for them to discover the cultivation path first. But they did not. You mean? Robin furrowed his eyebrows slightly. He had basically forgotten that there was a boiling cup of tea in his hand. What if we assumed that humans are the pampered children of the planets, and that the planet spirits push the geniuses of the human race to explore the internal energy cultivation system first to strengthen the human race before others? Okay. Let's not exaggerate too much here. Robin waved his hands and shook his head. You say the humans are the pampered children of the planets, and the planets push human geniuses to discover the internal energy system faster? How did you come up with something like this? This theory can be easily disproven for 2 reasons. The first reason is that the method of internal energy training is not very difficult or something full of mysteries, It is actually the easiest one of them all. One doesn't even have to know about the patterns to use it, unlike the Nahari Divine Tattoo System, for example. Then he continued to explain, the energy gathering center is an organ like any other in the body, and it is present in all intelligent creatures in the area below the navel. How can it stay hidden forever? Someone must discover the use of that area sooner or later. When someone discovers that this area can store energy, he will immediately work to find a way to gather energy from his surroundings and keep it there, which will head to find that way of creating solid foundations, and after he reaches a certain level of strength, let's say level 10, he will not be able to advance further except by studying a heavenly law, and after that, then you will have to discover more about that law in order to improve your strength further and build more powerful and much bigger solid foundations. By this point, you will have a complete internal energy system. The process is smooth and organized and only requires the passage of time and the accumulation of experiences to reach it. It is not mysterious and requires special enlightenment or anything like that. We can even take a step further and say it's primitive and natural. Let's leave that aside for now. I know that you would say, if the internal energy system is so easy, why do only humans discover it every day? Let us go to the second reason then, that is even clearer. You say humans are the spoiled sons of the planets. Humans actually exist on the 4 planets, but how are they doing? They were exterminated on the farm planet, they are currently being obliterated on planet Greenland, and they are raised on farms on planet Nahari destined to be slaves or food. The only planet on which humans survived and evolved is the planet Jura, and that is because for some reason there are only humans on it. Is this how the planet treats its spoiled children? If this is the case, then I represent all humans when I say that we do not want to be spoiled anymore. Jabba spoke in a hurry. But what does the planet have to do with this? All humans at some point have the upper hand, but for some reason, every time a traitor leaks the internal energy cultivation method, internal struggles occur that weaken the human side, and then another race that hates the humans comes and destroys them. Every time humans receive a gift that gives them blatant superiority, but each time they lose it themselves. Can't we attribute the destruction of humans on the 3 planets to the stupidity of their leaders? We can also attribute human superiority to the genius of the human children. Why attribute the good things to the planet's spirit and the bad ones to the humans? Don't be ridiculous. Can't you see what is happening here on planet Greenland? The Traiants have absolute advantages in every way. If this planet's spirit is kind to anyone, it would be them. Robin raised his shoulder slightly. Robin was categorically refusing to accept the fact that the planet's spirits had a hand in the matter, not because he was certain that it was impossible, but because everything he knew about the planet's spirit was extremely vague. How could Robin pin anything suspicious on the will of the planet's spirit? Wouldn't that be too lazy? Jabba scratched his head for a few seconds. Well, in the end, it's just a theory that can be right or wrong. Let's leave the reason aside for now and focus on the obvious conclusion, which is that humans are present on all planets and are always the first to discover internal energy cultivation methods. Can we agree on this point at least? Agreed. But what then? That's exactly the same conclusion I made to myself when I thought about it and hit the same wall. In the end, it's just an interesting piece of information, but it can't be used for anything practical given our current low level of power and simple understanding of the universe. All we can do is admire how interesting it is and then forget about it. Robin giggled upon hearing this. Good. At least now we have a point we can move on from. Jabba suddenly clapped, then took out a flat, transparent stone from his void ring and passed it to Robin. Robin received it indifferently and waited for Jabba to explain what this was. But suddenly he raised his eyebrows slightly when he saw that his fingers had swelled several times when he looked at them through the stone. When he turned the stone to the other side, he found that his fingers were still the same size, but now the pebbles on the ground looked much bigger. Here Jabba intervened. This is called the Revealing Moonstone. When you look through it, you will find that it has the ability to magnify things 10 times their original size. The Greenlanders here use it to detect the presence of very tiny insects and the proportions of herbal ingredients when they make wound pastes or injury powder. If you place more than one detector moonstone under each other, the magnification effect will double, reaching hundreds of folds. Robin nodded his head several times with a smile. This is actually a useful item for doing research. You won't need it now since you have an eye of truth, but it is extremely useful for most researchers and chemists. It seems that the master law of truth choosing you was not out of the blue. It wasn't just about you seeing the heavenly law cores or the heavenly law's embodiments, right? Boy, what were you searching for behind my back? Ha! To tell the truth, during the 4 years that followed the declaration of war, I didn't have much to do, other than taking charge during major battles. The officers took care of everything else, so I had a lot of free time. Jabba scratched his head a little while smiling in embarrassment. Returning to our topic, when I came to the idea that humans might have a special status above that of other intelligent creatures, I wanted to come and talk to you about it, but you were in seclusion for a long time, plus I didn't have any evidence as they were all theories. So I decided to research the topic further instead of waiting until you come out and present the topic to you and waste your precious time without evidence. I didn't know you already had an idea about it by then. The first idea that came to my mind was actually very simple. It was to make a comparison between humans and other intelligent creatures, so I can see if there is a tangible difference between us. At first, I did not achieve anything. The external form is not a standard, and the internal organs are also very similar in terms of working principles. They only differ in their location and perhaps their size to match the shape and the needs of the different-looking physical body. I said to myself that this is certainly not the only difference. But I did not have the means to research more deeply at that time until I read some reports from the headquarters about the customs and traditions of people in Greenland and learned about the revealing moonstone. And then a new phase of exploration began. At this point, Jabba stood up and went to get 4 containers that were tightly wrapped in special ways. Then he pulled out a table and placed it in front of Robin. He placed the containers on it and then began carefully removing the packaging. Quickly became clear that the 4 containers contained blood. Then he spoke in a serious manner. Here is a sample of my blood from when I still possessed the body of a Nahari giant. I wrapped it in a special way to prevent it from going bad. It should be good as new. There are also a sample of the blood of 2 brothers of the astral race and the dwarf race, in addition to a sample of the blood of one of the young men of the Borton family. Master, please take your time and use the revealing moonstone to examine these samples and tell me what you think. Robin raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Jabba for a few seconds, before putting the revealing moonstone on the table and focusing his gaze on a random container with his golden eyes. The revealing moonstone was a good addition to your purpose before you got your eye. Now, however, you don't need it. Keep practicing, and you will be able to use your own microscopic eye. Although he had rarely used his eyes for a purpose such as magnification and seeing small particles much in the past because he did not need to do such a thing, he had absolute confidence that his eyes were capable of reaching the required degree of focus if his eye was able to see patterns that all living things cannot see. Would it be a problem if it made his eyesight sharper for a bit? He had been able to sharpen his vision several times previously on battlefields, but the effect of this ability was very limited, just to better see what was happening in one of the wings of the army. But as for using it for something like an investigation in a faraway place, this is impossible. The uneven terrain like high trees and tall mountains get in the way, and the spherical nature of the planet makes the use of this type of capabilities for investigation very limited as well, even if there is nothing in the way. After Robin focused completely on the bowl for about a full minute, trying to get his eyes to obey him, his vision began to gradually change. The image in front of him changed from a container filled with red liquid placed on a wooden table, to a world in which there was nothing but blood, but he still saw nothing but a featureless liquid. After another minute of concentration and the precision of his vision penetrating to become hundreds of times sharper than its normal self, finally, the image in front of him began to change. Red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and a liquid in which all these elements were swimming. With one look, Robin was able to determine the name and use of each of what he sees. Although Planet Jura was not very advanced in terms of science, they still had some progress in terms of making pills, studying living organisms, and conducting medicine, and they have objects similar to the revealing moonstone with which they can conduct molecular studies. So knowing the components of blood was never a secret. It was something he read about in passing in the Burton family library even before going to the cave. That is also why Robin was surprised when Jabba asked him to see the components of blood. What else could be there? But he did not say anything and tried again to strengthen his gaze farther and search for something else. Knowing Jabba, he would definitely not ask him for something trivial to waste his time. There is definitely something here that no one had noticed before. After Robin achieved the penetrating power of his vision to reach a few thousand times the normal vision of humans, something else finally appeared before him. There were circular particles arranged extremely precisely in a line shape, and even that space between them was identical, as if they were soldiers lined up in a battalion. And between these circular particles there were other larger particles, full of protrusions, moving freely between the spaces of the circular particles. When focusing a little more, Robin was able to detect a fine thread of natural energy. The energy in the blood was so faint that it was on the verge of disappearing, perhaps because Jabba had drawn these samples a long time ago. This did not surprise Robin much, as there is no specific system in the body dedicated to transferring energy from the energy gathering center to the rest of the body to put it to use, so the energy moves through the arteries and veins designated for transporting blood. It is actually common knowledge. What really caught Robin's attention was not the natural energy thread itself, but rather that he saw it moving along the rows of regular circular particles smoothly until one of the larger particles attracted that energy towards it for a fraction of a second, before the energy thread returned to continue its path again on its regular path until it collides with another larger particle, and the process is thus repeated. What Robin sees now is very similar to a harp, as the regular circular particles resemble the strings of a harp, while the larger, bumpy particles take the place of the human hand that bends these strings for a moment before returning to their place. It can also be described as a line of soldiers. The last soldier in the line passes his weapon to the soldier in front of him, and so on until the weapon goes to soldier number 4 from behind, for example. Then an officer comes cutting in the line and forcibly takes that weapon from the soldier to inspect it, then returns it to the soldier again, and the weapon continues on its way forward, until another officer comes to examine it again. In this analogy, the soldiers are the regular particles, the weapon is the strand of energy, and the officers are the larger protrusions particles. When Robin caught what was happening, his facial features changed and he leaned his body forward slightly to focus more. He remained in this state for a few minutes, until he raised his eyebrows in astonishment. After observing the work of those molecules for a long time, Robin realized that the way the energy thread moves is not random. Actually, the frequent movements of the larger particles can be said to be extremely precise. This mysterious process actually forms a huge and incredibly complex pattern. This pattern, Robin muttered as he tapped on the table nervously and excitedly. This is not a specific heavenly law pattern. The energy movements between the particles form a general pattern made up of parts of a large number of heavenly laws. There are many advantages that this huge pattern would give to its owner, and I will have to spend quite some time extracting and identifying them all, but in principle, and if I am not mistaken, the owner of this blood has a high resistance to fire, rough skin that can withstand high levels of pressure, and great arm strength. Do these blood samples belong to the dwarf race? It is no wonder that they have such a great inclination towards the blacksmithing profession. You could tell just by looking at the blood once? Even Jabba responded with apparent shock. He told him that these vessels contained the blood of humans, giants, dwarves, and astral, but he did not say which one was in which vessel. Robin knew which blood the vessel belonged to with ease. Also, with the help of quite a few revealing moonstones staking on top of each other, he was able to detect energy threads and various different particles, but he did not observe any specific pattern, and he certainly could not observe the things that the pattern affects. Robin did not respond to Jabba's question and quickly turned his gaze to another bowl to repeat the same action. Again in this bowl, he found the same rows of regular circular particles that looked like pearls and saw the energy threads moving on them in the same way. But among them, the different particles that moved between the rows of regular circular particles and attracted the energy threads towards them were much larger, and their movement was completely different from the particles filled with bumps in the dwarf's blood. It also retained energy for a much longer period before returning it to the arrays of regular circular particles. This sample contains patterns that cause gigantism in the body and a naturally high concentration of energy in the skin and muscles, which causes a blue color, and there is a corner of the pattern that has a direct effect on the mind, giving a feeling of arrogance and self-love. Self-love ultimately results in natural disdain for all that is different and a natural inclination towards betrayal. No wonder. This is your blood before your fight against the warlord. The blood of the Nahari giants. Robin spoke, But this time he did not seem as enthusiastic as when he was looking at the dwarf's blood. Rather, he seemed to remember something that made the veins on his forehead twitch with anger for a moment. Then Robin did not add another word and moved his gaze to the third bowl. Jabba was about to say something when he saw the anger that momentarily appeared on his master's face. But he merely furrowed his eyebrows slightly and said nothing when he saw him move on to the next bowl. Tisk! Robin put the bowl containing the blood of the Nahari giants aside and focused on the next bowl after taking a few long breaths. The owner of this blood has longer limbs compared to humans and greater fluidity in distributing and absorbing soul force. This sample surely belongs to the astral race. So this is why most of them have been skilled in the profession related to the runes which depend greatly on the power of the soul, such as drawing talismans and divine tattoos. Ever since these professions were brought to light and to this day, they still have an advantage in these industries over humans, even though the techniques I created for these professions were intended for humans. Robin raised his eyebrows and tapped his chin for a few minutes. What he had seen so far changed his mind greatly about the differences between the races. Only from what he had seen so far and without doing further extensive studies he could already create several techniques that would suit one of the three races and bring out the best in them. But the problem is that his trouble in making these techniques will be directed to a specific race, from which the rest of his subjects will not benefit. For example, if he created a technique aimed at increasing the effectiveness of the part of the pattern that transmits the soul force in the astral men's blood, he could easily create an elite squad of rune masters capable of surpassing their current limits by many levels. He could even devote some time to creating offensive soul techniques and have an entire legion of soul experts. He himself felt the importance of the power of the soul in his fight against Hoffenheim. But if he did create such a technique, it would definitely not have any empowering effect on the Nahari giants if they were to use it, for example, and it may have a slight effect on dwarves. Of course, having an entire squad of the astral men specializing in soul attacks is worth it even if the rest of the races cannot use those techniques, but it is also a far-fetched dream for now. He does not have authority over the entire astral race. He barely has a few dozen astral men in his rune master squad that have been away from their home for nearly 10 years and clearly want to leave. At the same time, he can no longer summon any more astrals due to cutting his ties with the Nahari Union sect. But even if he had true control over them right now, was strengthening an entire race by targeting their bloodline something he really should do? What will happen after several generations when the astralists reach a high level of soul power as a race? Will he be able to control them as well then? Then Robin thought of something and opened his eyes to the fullest. Is this what the first Heavens Chosen relied on in making the first stage of the body-strengthening divine tattoo? Thinking about it, the body-strengthening divine tattoo is identical to a few parts of the pattern he saw in the giant's blood. Although it does not have the entire pattern because the pattern inside the blood is absolutely huge, the body-strengthening tattoo clearly targets and strengthens several parts of the pattern inside the blood, especially the corner that stores energy in the muscles. There are several other elements in the body-strengthening divine tattoo that are truly innovative, such as the presence of a rune to draw energy from the surroundings, or the presence of a rune that causes the energy that enters the muscles to be stored and hardened in them. But in general, more than half of the tattoo inevitably came as a copy-paste from the pattern in the blood. Robin doesn't even remember how many times he has stopped at this point in the past. Humans created the internal energy system on planet Nahari. Why did the first Heavens Chosen change everything and take a different path like the path of divine tattoos that only benefit the race of Nahari giants? Rather, how did he think of something like a tattoo to strengthen the body, which is composed of parts of a large number of minor physical laws, and manage to integrate them in the first place? At that time, Robin praised the first Heavens Chosen as a genius after he decoded the runes of the body-strengthening divine tattoos and revealed the extent of their complexity. But now, history says that the first Heavens Chosen was a man who was interested in being secluded doing research before he became the first Heavens Chosen. Were his researches before seeing the truth related to blood and the difference between races? If this is true, then everything has become very clear now. Under the pressure of the raging war between dozens of different races on that day, the first Heavens Chosen decided to create an energy system that would benefit only the giants and not repeat the mistake of the human race that created the internal energy system that suits everyone, and in the end, it was stolen from them and everything was leaked. Only when a system is created specifically for a specific race will there be no benefit to the rest of the genders even if it is leaked. Wait! Robin furrowed his eyebrows slightly before raising them up with a look of astonishment on his face. The first Heavens Chosen was researching the differences between races. This makes sense since there is a war between multiple races and he wants to find a weak point in them, but he definitely didn't see blood patterns before he obtained the Eye of Truth. The most he could do was see those different molecules. How and why did the Master Law of Truth choose him? Isn't the truth limited to the exploration of heavenly laws? Robin felt that his mind was struck by a small lightning bolt at this moment since he began his path in that cave and relied on studying the heavenly laws to reach a higher understanding of the truth of the universe. And he followed the same path with his only disciple Jabba and tried to cram his head with a huge number of heavenly laws. And indeed, in the end, he got the right to see the truth thanks to the embodiment of the laws and law cores. No, wait. Jabba had been studying blood for many years before he had the opportunity to see the embodiments and cores of the laws. Was it the research of blood that pushed him further forward, and the embodiments and laws cores were the last straw in the equation? Damn it! It turns out that pursuing heavenly laws directly isn't the only way. Is it possible that exploring the blood and researching the origins of the races is also a lofty goal and leads to the same result? But it turns out that this is not the only way. Is it possible that exploring the origins of races is also a lofty goal for research that can lead to being accepted by the truth? Until this moment, Robin thought that chasing the laws was the male route and anything else was just a side job to fill his free time and strengthen his army. But perhaps the path leading to the truth is not one in the end. The truth. The truth. The truth of what exactly? Robin shook his head gently with a self-deprecating smile on his face. It seems that he has greatly underestimated the Master Law of Truth, again. Jabba continued to watch from the side without saying a word. Although Robin did not say anything, the expression on his face that changed by the minute said enough. So he did not want to interrupt his train of thought with a stray word, so he kept quiet. Only after about another quarter of an hour did Robin sigh and bend down again to explore the last blood container, the only one left and should be the one containing human blood. Although his new outlook on the Master Law of Truth occupied his mind greatly, the curiosity generated by knowing the characteristics of the human race and how he could target their initiative advantage to strengthen them further won out in the end. If he could discover a power that could only strengthen humans, as the first Heavens Chosen did with the Nahari giants, he would finally have a clear path to follow. He might be able to solve the problem of the loss of talent that the commoners have on the planet Jura, and his chances in the coming massive war would increase many times over. This way he will also take more steps towards his main path and will not deviate, since it turns out that researching blood also increases understanding of the truth. But after Robin took his first look at the container hosting the human blood, an expression of shock, disappointment, and anger appeared on his face. He then looked at Jabba and shouted, "What the hell is this supposed to mean? What the hell is this supposed to mean?" An expected reaction. My reaction was also similar when I first made the comparison. Compared to Robin's shocked expression, Jabba was very calm and only shrugged his shoulders slightly. Do you now know why I started this conversation by talking about the origins of races? Robin looked at Jabba with unfocused eyes for a few seconds, then went back to look at the human blood sample in front of him. But after a few additional minutes, he seemed to be unconvinced, so he made a cut in his finger and used his microscopic eye effect to test his blood, and the result was the same. He almost went crazy. When examining the blood of the Nahari giants, the Astrals, and the dwarves, there was a clear combination of regular molecules that form the main path for the energy threads and other variable molecules that manipulate the path of the energy threads and create patterns with known features and have a clear effect. For example, the variable molecules in the blood of the Nahari giants contain the reason for the gigantism of their bodies, the changing color of their skin and flesh, and even the reason for their barbaric behavior. It can be said that those variable molecules are what define the race of the Nahari giants. And so on with the blood samples of the Astrals and dwarfs, the variable molecules in their blood clearly describe these two races, as if it were the engineering blueprint for their construction. Although the shape, size, and behavior of the variable molecules differed greatly between the three samples, the existence of this type of molecule became a kind of truth in Robin's mind. But this did not last long. The human blood contains regular molecules like the rest of the three races but does not contain any variable molecules. But what is this supposed to mean? If these variable molecules represent the engineering blueprint for species, why do they not exist in humans? Robin's eyes lost their focus completely. His mind seemed to be working at double speed to come up with all possible logical conclusions. All right, I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but I know that after a while you will say you need to expand your scope of research to come up with a good conclusion. So allow me to save you this unnecessary process. Jabba waved his hands several times to attract Robin's attention again. Then he quickly stood up and went to get blood containers. Quickly. The table in front of Robin was filled with more than 30 containers similar to the first four. Then Jabba began to talk again. After I examined the blood of the four races in your true beginning Empire's army and saw the difference, I placed a request to the merchants of the Burton family responsible for doing business in Nahari, and one of the Demon Kings to bring me blood samples from every different intelligent race they spot, and these are all the samples they were able to collect for me. They contain most of the intelligent races in the farm planet and planet Nahari, and there are also a few containers that have blood samples from different beasts as well. I collected them myself from planet Greenland. Please take a look at them as well, especially the blood of the buds and demons. Robin did not say a word or wait a moment. He immediately stripped the first container and began examining the blood sample inside it, then the next and the next. They were all not out of the ordinary, the same regular molecules and the same variable molecules. The only thing different was the properties of those variable molecules. Although Robin does not know of any blood sample belonging to any race, and even with the fact that he has not seen any race from the races of Planet Farm until today, thanks to the variable molecules and the patterns they create, he was able to easily determine the appearance properties and some of the points of strength and weakness of each race among these samples. Even the containers containing beast blood samples were no exception to this rule. After examining some of them, Robin easily says the characteristics of each beast out loud. Some of them were beasts descended from dragons, such as land cruiser lizards, and others were plant-eating beasts that the army uses for transportation. And soon he even found a sample of the Draco's blood among them. Although he was unable to determine all their details just by looking at the sample, certain things in the patterns formed by the variable molecules made him identify them easily. For example, the pattern that contained great pain tolerance, bulk, and thick skin definitely belonged to a mountain rhinoceros beast and no other creature. Then finally he reached the last two vessels, one of which contained green blood. But this did not arouse Robin's curiosity since the other blood samples were also of different colors. But after examining them, Robin noticed that this sample did not contain any energy particles, neither regular nor variable, but he was still capable for quickly identifying the owner of this blood. This is the blood of the buds. A simple and contrived blood formula. Only a unique entity like the buds can have blood like this. No matter how far Hoffenheim reaches in understanding life and creation, he will never reach this precise level. So this did not stop Robin much, even without seeing the blood of the buds. He knew since the last visit to Morin that the blood of the buds is useless and does not compare to the rest of the hum. Robin paused for a moment when his train of thought reached that point. That day, Morin said that the power of the demons increases due to the blood of intelligent beings. Blood? Robin quickly opened the bowl containing the demon's blood. After Robin opened the demon blood container, he was met with small bubbles that floated to the surface of the blood container and popped, causing a nauseating stench to emerge. The blood itself has passed the stage of redness, and it can even be said that it tends to be black more than red. Robin endured the stench, forcefully activated his microscopic eye, and was surprised again. No way! Unlike humans and other living creatures, the blood of demons does not contain regular energy molecules responsible for energy transfer, but it does contain variable molecules. Robin almost went crazy at the sight. It is understandable that the buds do not have regular energy molecules. The buds, in the end, are bodies created by Tree Father Hoffenheim with his limited understanding of creation. Having them so close to real intelligent races is already a magnificent feat by Hoffenheim. And not only in the part of the regular energy molecules, the buds have deficiencies all over. For example, their bodies look different depending on which law they use, so you can literally see which bud will be using which law and raise your guard against it. Some of them are completely white, and these are the weak buds, but the stronger buds are all reddish in color or have a hint of blue and green or any other color. Why? Hoffenheim established a system similar to divine tattoos that allow the bud to use a certain law from its birth. A bud whose color tends to be red, for example, uses the element of fire, and so on. In order for a bud to use any heavenly law of the fire path, for example, and even have the second or third stage of the law, it must have the law and energy available since birth. And how is this happening? Hoffenheim himself consumed a huge amount of the planet's energy to produce a bud of this caliber directly. Since day one, the bud would open its eye to find itself having the ability to use the third stage of law and the energy needed to do so. Therefore, the bud does not have an energy gathering center like other creatures, but rather, like divine weapons, they contain energy throughout their bodies. Although this mindset was flawed and cut off any future path for the buds to train and become stronger, it also made the buds store energy in their entire bodies like plants and weapons, and made them immortal beings as long as the Tree Father supplies them with life energy from time to time and replaces the damaged parts of their bodies. So it is not surprising that these weapons or plants do not have what the rest of the living creatures have. But what about the demons? Why don't they also have the regular energy molecules that all other living beings have? Of course, the variable molecules here did not have the role of changing the path of energy and making patterns, since there are no energy paths in the blood in the first place. So what are they doing? Robin furrowed his eyebrows slightly for a few seconds, but quickly made up his mind and dropped a drop of his own blood into the demon blood container. It's a fact that the demons become stronger because of the blood. Then there will definitely be a reaction now. Most likely, all the energy in the drop of my blood will be absorbed, and perhaps my regular energy particles will be swallowed as well. This must be the reason why Morin did not benefit from eating the sprout meat that day, because their blood is different. But if this is what makes demons stronger, why don't they get stronger by eating beasts as well? The beasts also have the same blood composition as the intelligent creatures and At this moment, Robin noticed something strange. After a drop of his blood fell into the demon's blood container, the variable molecules in the demon's blood actually moved and began to eat something greedily, but that thing they ate was not the energy threads or the regular molecules. In fact, the drop of Robin's blood was swallowed in the blink of an eye. There was nothing left of it floating on the surface of the bowl except for the energy threads that quickly evaporated into the air and the regular energy particles that were expelled and flew in the air like dust grains. As for that small spot that had swallowed the drop of Robin's blood, it seemed to be burning with enthusiasm, and the explosions of bubbles in it doubled as if it was celebrating the feast that consisted of a single drop of blood. Robin looked at the bowl of blood with his eyes open and his mouth forming a zero shape for a long time, and Jabba kept looking at Robin patiently as he held a wet cloth to his nose due to the smell of demon blood. After an unknown time, Robin brought a drop of the bud's blood and placed it in the demon blood container to see what would happen. The drop remained floating on top of the container for a few seconds, like oil on water, and then it began to boil and evaporate quickly. Within 1 minute, there was no trace left of it. This time, not even the drop of blood itself was devoured. Robin repeated the same process, but this time with the blood of the mountain rhinoceros beast, and the result was exactly like the bud's blood. The drop remained in place for a few seconds. The variable particles in the demon's blood began to move away from the drop of the beast's blood, as if someone had poured garbage under their feet. And then the beast's blood boiled and completely evaporated into the air. Robin looked at the blood container for a long time with stupefaction and a feeling of helplessness, as if he was facing his child who had made a mistake and did not know how to punish him. In the end, he decided to conduct an experiment in order to confirm the terrifying theory that ran through his head, even though he already knew the outcome. Then he put a drop of the dwarf's blood. As happened with the drop of his blood, the drop of the dwarf's blood was devoured by the changing molecules in the demon's blood, leaving behind only the energy system in the dwarf's blood, which quickly evaporated away as well, and the demon's blood container returned to behaving like a flame after throwing oil on it. If the demons do not care about the energy within the blood, nor do they care about the regular or the variable molecules. Rather, it can be said that they consider them filth and expel them. So what strengthens the demons? The blood itself? The sticky red substance liquid itself? What the hell is this? Robin began to knock on the table with some nervousness. Since their bodies do not care about internal energy, then why would the benefit they get from eating a strong person be greater than the benefit they get from preying on a mortal who has never known cultivation? Is it some kind of reward system because they got a high-quality catch or something? Robin let out a cold exhale as he looked at the blood container with mixed emotions. Why do the demons look like they were created to exterminate intelligent creatures? Eating to gain power. This is not a new concept at all, as this is the best way for beasts to quickly increase their strength level as well. The various beasts do not have an energy-gathering center like those of intelligent races. The different intelligent races cultivate techniques to absorb energy, create solid foundations that may contain impurities, study laws, and all that complicated stuff. But the beasts are in a way different situation. What they have instead of all this is a solid crystal that changes its location from one beast to another. This crystal is the source of the beast's power, and the beast's power depends on several factors, including the size of the crystal and the purity of the energy in it. This is also why the beasts do not have to enter into seclusions for years in meditation about the universe. Depending on the species and the strength of that beast's ancestors, each beast is born with a crystal that contains a heavenly law given to them by nature, and its body works to absorb energy from the atmosphere and deliver it to the energy crystal automatically as well. As for the method of accelerating the enlargement of the size of the crystal and filtering it of the impurities, this is easier. This happens by eating other crystals. Eating meat for the beasts is only a way to fill their hungry stomachs and give them the energy to move like other creatures. But their main goal is always to eat other beasts' crystals, eat some high-quality herbs, or to swallow the energy-gathering center of intelligent creatures. Even after Robin came to planet Greenland, he saw the beasts attacking and greedily eating the buds. Although the buds do not have an energy crystal or an energy-gathering center, their unique bodies, which are saturated with energy, also constitute excellent food for them. Beasts have only one thing on their mind, which is to eat, and of course this will only happen through killing. A lot of killing. Robin has lived among the beasts for more than 100 years and understands them well, or at least this applies to relatively weaker beasts. Most of these beasts would attack each other on sight without fear or taking risks into consideration. According to their primitive thinking, random killing is the only way they can quickly increase their strength and protect themselves from being the next meal for another beast. Even after Robin appeared and took complete control over the area around the cave, the beasts there continued to attack him for decades until they finally began to understand the meaning of fear. In fact, even after decades, the beasts were still trying to sneak into the cave while he was sleeping in order to make a meal out of him. Thinking about it, the demons aren't that different. In terms of the pure killing drive, they do not lose to the beasts, and Robin tested this repeatedly on planet Jura when he made rules not to hunt innocent humans, but many demons ignored his orders anyway and turned the ancestral continent into hell anyway. Even after Billy captured a number of outlaws and publicly executed them, the rest of the demons did not stop and continued hunting in secret until they were sent to the central continent. The only difference in behavior between the demons and the beasts is that demons only eat intelligent races with ancient blood lineage, according to what they say. Robin thought of something at this point. The demons don't hunt their own kind like the beasts do. Is it possible that they don't have that ancient blood lineage? I don't think those things feel compassion and respect, and that they wouldn't eat their kind out of love. They shouldn't be gaining any new power by eating their own. But does that mean they are not considered one of the intelligent races? Robin furrowed his eyebrows tightly. But what is the ancient blood lineage they speak of in the first place? Do they refer to the regular energy molecules? In the end, it is the only factor common to all intelligent creatures. Robin shook his head when he thought of this. When testing the drop of blood, the demon blood only absorbed the drop of his pure blood and completely ignored the regular energy molecules and actually forced them to fly away. The descendants of the ancient blood. The descendants of the ancient blood. Although I still need time to study the regular and variable energy molecules in order to fully understand them, there is a conclusion that we can draw immediately, which is that the patterns formed by the energy when it passes through the regular and variable energy particles cause changes in the body and character. But it is not the original. This can be easily observed in human blood, which does not contain variable molecules at all. The patterns that the energy threads form when they pass through regular and variable energy molecules are important in determining the properties of species, but they are not irreplaceable. In theory, if we replace the variable molecules in the blood container of the Nahari giants with the variable molecules in the blood container of dwarves, a Nahari giant would turn into a dwarf and vice versa. But if we completely remove the variable molecules, these patterns will disappear and the blood will contain only regular energy molecules, that is, it will turn into human blood. You mean? Jabba didn't know whether his master was talking to him or muttering to himself, so he remained silent. But at this point, he couldn't help himself and intervened. What do I mean? This is a good question. I mean that if you wear a dark green uniform armor that focuses only on protection and holds a scepter that helps speed up the transformation of ordinary energy into life energy, then everyone in the army will think that you are one of the forces from the Holy Tree continent. But if you wear the golden full-body armor that gives you tremendous defensive and offensive capabilities, everyone will doubt that you are a member of the Burton family or that you are some rising genius. However, if you throw all your armor on the ground and stand naked, you will lose a large part of your strength, but you will still be Jabba. Robin returned to muttering with clear enthusiasm. Although it is a far-fetched analogy, and I know it, allow me to liken these variable molecules and the patterns they create to the armors, meaning that the variable molecules and the patterns they form are not the basic building unit of a living organism, but rather it can be said that they are closer to the final touches to determine the characteristics of different species and their strengths and weaknesses. Jabba scratched his head slightly. But the variable molecules are not like armor, and removing them from the body is not an easy matter. In your opinion, if this was your field of study and wanted to know what would happen if you eliminated those variable molecules, what do you think is the best way to destroy them? Robin responded slowly, pointing repeatedly toward the bowl in front of him. Of course, I know that it is not like armor. This is just an approach, and I know that the analogy is actually a bit far-fetched as the variable molecules are not like armor that can be put on and taken off whenever you want. I had to increase my visual penetration power thousands of times until I could see it. I even started to feel some headaches while using my eyes this way. Who knows how many variable molecules there are in a single drop of blood? Maybe tens of millions? Billions? You say, what would happen if we tried to destroy them? This is extremely difficult. Who would dare to destroy themselves? Even if those molecules were something foreign and even without it the body would still function normally, it is still an integrated device that is hiding in the depths of the body. But if we assume for the sake of investigation what would happen if we removed those variable molecules safely and over long periods of time, then, I cannot say definitively what would happen to the body of an intelligent creature when those variable molecules are removed from it, but without the presence of those patterns that come with it, then, in my opinion, there are two ways. Either the person loses the advantages that the patterns give him and turns into a human through a long-term process, or his body will not be able to keep up with the rapid internal changes that have occurred in it and will be exposed to immediate collapse. Therefore, in theory, changing energy particles are. While Robin was speaking, he suddenly stopped and looked at Jabba with eyes filled with shock. Is this what happened in your case? Is this what happened in your case? No, you did not use a method of slow transformation. Don't tell me that you destroyed your variable particles. Robin asked quickly and in shock. Until this moment, Robin had some doubts about what Jabba had committed against himself. After he reached this point in his speech, it would be difficult to ignore all the signs in Jabba's words at the beginning about the origin of intelligent creatures, but his destroying molecules directly. This is simply too dangerous. Robin heard about what happened that day. Jabba's body changed from a Nahari giant to a human in less than half an hour. There were no long-term changes or anything like that. His body was about to collapse more than once, and all of his blood vessels exploded, his muscles tore, and his bones shattered. He underwent a forced transformation. Jabba chuckled in a low voice. As expected of my master, all I did was ask you to take a look at the blood containers. But in a few minutes you discovered everything I worked hard to achieve for a few years and even some more. This is a little frustrating. And yes, this is indeed what happened. I destroyed the variable molecules in my body during the battle against the warlord. Robin hit the table so hard that the blood containers swelled and almost fell. Then he shouted at him, "Are you crazy? Even if the variable molecules are not the origin of the living being, They are still an essential system of the body. How dare you try to destroy something like this inside your body? No wonder you looked like a piece of blooded shit that day. What could we have done if your body collapsed and turned into a pile of sap? Who exactly are you trying to impress? Robin seriously lost his composure when he heard Jabba's explanation. He thought that Hoffenheim used the planet's spirit to do something to Jabba's body during their fight, or that Jabba used some secret death technique that the Nahari giants developed. Only now did he realize how close Jabba was to death, and he did it to himself. In a single drop of blood, Robin saw countless numbers of those variable molecules, which in turn created a massive energy pattern containing parts of an unknown number of heavenly laws. Is this something that can be destroyed at will? In fact, destroying the liver or the lung might as well be less harmful. Please take it easy, Master. Am I not okay now? Secondly, even if I die trying, what's the problem? I would have died anyway fighting against the warlord if I didn't use this last card. Jabba shook his head with a sarcastic laugh. Nonsense. I contacted you several times telling you that I was getting closer to you. Couldn't you have fought from afar and just harassed him until I arrived? Why did you have to face him alone in the first place? Didn't you have the entire 6th Legion by your side? Do you think you are the last hero or something? Robin shouted again. But if I had tried to do what you say, the number of deaths would have skyrocketed. And if that thundercloud had gotten closer to the ground, the entire Legion would have been annihilated in the end. Then let them be annihilated and save yourself. Men will not stop around and women will not stop giving birth. Soldiers can be replaced easily, but good generals are the ones who bring glory. 1 billion soldiers without a good general are nothing. Your importance as a general alone is greater than all the members of the 6th Legion combined. Jabba looked at his master with a meaningful smile. Why didn't you say that to yourself when you risked your life fighting against 6 warlords? You are the Emperor, you have a vast empire that extends to 3 planets for now. Aren't you much more important than just a general like me? Although I was already red and useless when you finally arrived, I was still aware of my surroundings and I felt your condition towards the end of the battle. You were not better off than me in any way. This is different. I am the one who brought those soldiers here. They are my responsibility. Robin didn't know what else to say. He didn't think much about it when he arrived on the battlefield and saw what was happening. His body moved on its own. Jabba laughed and shook his head. He wanted to ask, weren't the soldiers my responsibility too? But he chose not to say it in the end. He knew that this was Robin's way of closing the topic, so he did not continue this argument further. Jabba slowly scratched his head several times and lowered his gaze to the table. To tell you the truth, I kind of knew what are the risks when I made up my mind. It wasn't just a coincidence or a spur-of-the-moment decision. With the help of the Reveling Moonstones, I was able to see regular and variable molecules after only a few months of searching, but I didn't see any patterns nor did I know the benefit or effect of those molecules. I only saw molecules in my blood that doesn't look like those in the blood of humans, and I saw different types of those molecules in the blood of most other creatures except humans. So I began the theory that humans are the origin of intelligent creatures, and the matter about them being the pampered children of the planets began to grow in my head, which is why I opened up to you about this particular topic first. Robin waved his hand. It's just an empty theory that has no proof. Have you risked your life based on this alone? Who said that since humans lack the variable molecules, then that means they are the origin and the rest are mutants? Didn't it cross your mind that it might be humans who have a deficiency? Jabba quickly replied, it is indeed a theory, but if we take into account our talk about the presence of humans on all planets and the subject of discovering the internal training system first, don't you think that my theory is a little closer to the truth? I know that it is just a theory in the end, but frankly, curiosity almost killed me. How could it not, when I started doubting that we as Nahari giants are just a branch of humanity? And I started to question what exactly makes the humans the origin and if they have any edge over us Nahari giants. If there is anything that makes them superior at all, this topic greatly attracted me. And I wanted to see what would happen if the variable molecules were removed from the blood of an intelligent creature. Then he continued, so I tried for a year to find a way to expel the variable molecules in the blood. But they were too small and too many to expel, but I found that theoretically they could be destroyed. I said to myself, energy is already moving through those variable molecules all the time, Why not use this energy to destroy them? So I started experimenting immediately, and after another 2 years I arrived at a method by which I could control the subtle strands of energy. But its drawback was that I could only apply that technique to my body, because I was not sure of the result at first. I tried using that technique on a drop of blood on the tip of my index finger, destroying the variable molecules using the energy passing through them. Is this what you have arrived at after 2 years of research? Let me take a guess. Your finger exploded, Robin said sarcastically, a look of anger on his face. The more Jabba spoke, the more he became certain that he had been dancing on the rope of death for the past few years without his knowledge. Jabba shook his head with a strange smile. Indeed, the one who is a day older than you has the knowledge of a year more than you. Master, you are right again. Immediately after I destroyed the variable molecules in that drop of blood, there was a massive explosion, extremely shocking relative to the size of the drop of blood. The explosion was so powerful that it blew off the top of my finger and pushed me a few steps back. That day I realized 2 things. The first is that the technique is actually capable of doing what it was designed to do, and the second is that the resulting energy would be sufficient to destroy a few cities, so I immediately stopped the experiments and began researching another technique. A technique that could maintain that excess energy within the body. A way to retain the what? Let me clarify this for a bit as I don't completely understand. You found that there is enormous destructive energy produced from the destruction of variable molecules and that exploding the variable molecules in a single drop of blood demolished your finger. The finger of a person who has a body with the strength of half-step Martial Emperor. So you decided to retain all that explosive energy inside your body instead of finding a way to calm the explosion. Robin seemed to be talking down to his 2-year-old son and was trying to calmly tell him he was wrong instead of getting up and beating him up black and blue. Jabba scratched his head a few times. Yes, but what are my other options? If I let the explosion happen as it wants, then naturally it will penetrate my body as it exits, and I will definitely die with not even blood vapor remaining in my body. The only solution is to find a way to make my body flexible enough to retain that destructive energy inside for a certain period, and during that period, I would remove the destructive energy from my body in another safe way that does not kill me as it gets out. Robin nodded a few times. Of course, so that safe way you were talking about was to use that destructive energy to strengthen your attack on the warlord, right? Exactly. But what a pity. If I had let the explosion happen naturally, it would have wiped out that warlord, the 6th Legion, and the entire area, but unfortunately, because it took me half an hour to get that destructive energy out as I was trying to remove the destructive energy in the safest possible way, the strength of the destructive energy weakened greatly, and I was only able to stop the warlord instead of killing it. If it weren't for you coming in the end, the situation would have turned into a real disaster. Jabba shook his head a few times. This was really not what he expected. Robin raised his eyebrows slightly. But this is still awesome. You made a technique that can maintain enough energy to destroy cities within the body for a certain period of time. Isn't this a great idea? No wonder you didn't have the courage to try it immediately for fear of the outcome, and only your audacity moved when you found yourself in that situation against the warlord where you had to do or die. So you exploded the variable energy molecules all over your body with the first technique you created, and then used that second technique to suppress the energy generated inside your body and not allow it to leak out, and thus you obtained enormous power for a limited time. And even though you had to extract that power wisely and it was much weaker than it should have, it still made you as powerful as the warlord or even stronger. How did it feel to gain the power of a mid-level emperor realm? That should have been great, huh? Although it seemed like a compliment, Jabba felt a chill in his spine. Please calm your anger. I know what I did was a big risk. Okay? A bid. Risk? Only a big risk. Robin almost got up to slap Jabba in the head, but he resisted the urge and sat there with difficulty. He seemed to be fighting internally not to get up and beat Jabba into blue again. Look, aren't I okay now? Everything went well. Listen, boy, I will dismiss this foolishness and consider it the recklessness of youth and enthusiasm because you found a new toy and wanted to try it, but if you want to continue the path of research, you have to promise me to repeat it again. Robin calmed himself and spoke slowly. But don't but me. What, you think you are awesome now that your experiment worked? It's just your luck. Do you know how many things could have gone wrong? Tell me what would have happened if I was late just another 10 minutes. Huh? The warlord would have turned you into minced meat, and the research and techniques you struggled for years to perfect would have gone forever. Here is your new #1 rule. A researcher should stay alive in order to pass on his knowledge to people, not risk his life at the first chance he gets. Damn it! That's why it's not normal to find someone who loves fighting and works as a researcher at the same time. These two aspects are almost impossible to come together. Are you telling me that if you continued your research for a few more years, you would not have found a method that was less risky and had a higher success rate? If your body had exploded and turned into vapor that day, your name would have been erased from people's minds within days, and perhaps you would remain in the minds of those who love you for a few years at best before they were forgotten as well. And Hoffenheim would have lost at most one warlord of his 6. Sorry. Jabba lowered his head and said one word. He knew that what Robin said was true in the end, but he was still hoping to hear something else. Sigh, there is no need to lower your head. Raise it until it penetrates the sky, although I did not help you much, but allow me to say that you are my pride. Only these 2 techniques that you mentioned in passing are enough to immortalize your name as a genius researcher. Is it easy to control energy at this precise level? Or is it easy to keep that enormous energy inside the body without causing an internal explosion? You have achieved more on your own and in a few short years in the field of blood research than the first Heaven's Chosen ever have, and he was using the eye of truth. The road ahead of you is wide open, but you have to stay alive first. Try it once, twice, try 100 times on your enemies before you apply it to yourself. If I had followed my desires and rushed in whatever path I took, I would have died 1,000,000 times by now. Jabba raised his head and looked at Robin with shining eyes, clearly layered with tears. Only after a few seconds did he show a gentle smile that seemed intrusive on his harsh face. Thank you. I will remember every word. This is it. These words from his master, this recognition of his ability, this is what has been driving him forward over the past years. The feeling that he had let his master down never left him. The second Heaven's Chosen received a book containing some teachings and experiences, and it was enough to make him the well-known second Heaven's Chosen. But he took the information directly from his master, who was still alive, and continued to learn for 20 years, but he still couldn't make the truth accept him. How stupid must he be for something like this to happen? So in the end, he decided to take a step back and practice the major heavenly law of gravity and convert himself into a general to defend his master, the third Heaven's Chosen, leaving the position of the true disciple, the true heir of the truth, open for Robin to accept another worthy one. This was the main reason behind his decision at that time. He didn't want his master to waste more time on him and continue to place hopes on him. Building his knighthood pillars with the major heavenly law of gravity so that he can help in the war? This is nonsense. Even without the internal energy system, Jabba was powerful enough to wipe the floor with any other soldier in Robin's army. He just wanted to fade into the background like he never existed. But Robin did not give him this opportunity. He didn't abandon him or treat him differently after he took the path of gravity, but rather recognized him as a disciple repeatedly in front of everyone and raised his status to be second only to him in the entire empire, placing him even before his adopted sons. How can he still continue to tarnish his reputation? How can he hear the inhabitants of 4 planets say that the Emperor's student is just an additional general in the army, like dozens of others? He must do something unique to force everyone to say, "This is what is expected of the disciple chosen by His Excellency the Emperor." He must save face for his master and for himself, even at the cost of his life. And it was. The fatigue of searching for 4 years while at the same time leading an army on an alien planet? The pain he experienced when the explosive energy destroyed his body from the inside out? The initial eye of truth he has finally acquired? All of this is easy now, all of this is forgotten as if it never happened. He finally heard what he wanted. So, after several seconds, Robin gestured with his hands as if asking for something. So what? So do you intend to give me the 2 new techniques or not? Robin asked with raised eyebrows and a big smile. Oh! Jabba was startled and got up to retrieve 2 empty metal tablets, then inserted his soul sense into them for a few minutes before passing them to his master. This tablet contains the technique that I used to control the energy within my blood at the molecular level and force it to destroy the variable molecules. I called it the Superior Energy Control Technique. As for this tablet, it contains the technique that I used to trap the excess energy inside my body. I think the name Energy Trapping Technique is an appropriate name, don't you think? Robin took the 2 tablets, inserted his spiritual sense into them, and closed his eyes for a few minutes. It can be said that it is a masterful work, to say the least, especially the Superior Energy Control Technique. It is extremely useful in principle. Even if we put the matter of destroying the variable molecules on the side for now, this technique alone can be used for countless purposes, but unfortunately it is not complete. It is mentioned that you used the sap from the trunk of a tree called Earth's Dusk in order to enter a state that allows you to feel the movement of energy in your body better. Even the energy trapping technique, you used the dust of a certain mineral in order to close the pores of your body, and used the yellow lily flowers powder in order to give elasticity to your arteries so that they do not explode immediately. If I had not done this, I would have waited a long time until I reached the same result, and perhaps I would not have achieved it. For example, I tried a lot and in various ways to control my energy at the molecular level, but to no avail. Then I asked around and learned that there is a tree on planet Greenland whose bark is used by the locals when they try to break through to an upper realm because it gives them a sense of euphoria that makes them able to feel everything that happens in their bodies better. And here it is. Jabba nodded and then took out a vial containing the sap of the bark of the Earth's Dusk tree from his ring. Secondly, Master, I don't mean to correct you or anything, but why do you say that it is incomplete? According to my definition, the completion of a technique is when it is used for the purpose for which it was designed and succeeds. What is the problem if we use an external element? What difference does it make as long as the result is good enough? What is important is the goal, not the means. Robin rested his head on his right fist and looked at Jabba for a moment before he sighed and nodded. You're right. Maybe my horizons were too narrow in this issue. You said that what matters is the goal, not the means. What a good sentence. Maybe I should really change my outlook on the rest of my research as well. My knowledge about materials and plants is very superficial and my thinking is focused on patterns only. If I use these natural resources, the circle of my innovations will expand greatly. Perhaps techniques that take me 10 years to complete will only need 3 years this way. Jabba laughed proudly and his look towards his master clearly increased in respect. It is not easy for a person to admit his mistake, especially in front of his disciple. So after hearing everything and knowing the current situation, do you think my theory about the origin of all beings and the pampered children of the planets is the human race as I told you? Jabba pressed again. Hearing praise had become an addiction for him. Robin was silent for a few seconds before he finally opened his mouth. This is a question that cannot be decided yes or no in a session like this, but rather requires long research. Your theory is based on the fact that humans are the origin of intelligent beings because they do not have variable molecules and that you, of course, turned into a human when you removed those variable molecules from you. This does not mean that humans are the origin of intelligent beings. Rather, it only means that we are closer to a standard version without additions. Then he added, the regular molecules alone do not make any difference in the body or character. Rather, they are merely energy pathways. I am confident that even if these molecules are completely terminated from the body, what will happen is that the person will be unable to use his energy freely, and extracting his energy from his energy gathering center will be difficult like we see happening with the demons. They don't have the regular molecules and can't use the inner energy system as good as the other intelligent races, but they still can. Let's leave the demon aside. In the worst-case scenario, the person we remove his regular molecules from his body will become completely disabled in terms of energy use, but I'm certain that this person will remain a normal human being. He may be mortal, but he will still be a human being. From here, we can conclude that there is something else that determines what a human being is. Let me give you another reason. Suppose we find a way to destroy the variable molecules in a beast, for example, a lion-shaped beast. Do you think it will turn into a human as well? Most likely its characteristics will change and it may turn from a lion to a small cat or maybe even a great beast, but it will definitely not turn into a human, but rather will remain in the feline family. The same applies to the tree fathers or the tree ants. Aren't they also intelligent creatures? However, they are just trees that gained consciousness later. Will removing the variable molecules from them turn those trees into humans? Robin shook his head. Jabba quickly interjected, but that doesn't negate my theory, right? I've been a Nahari giant all my life and turned into a human once my variable molecules were destroyed. Doesn't this mean that the human race is the origin of at least a number of intelligent beings? Robin stayed silent for a few minutes before he finally opened his mouth. According to what I see, there is definitely something hiding deep within the body of a living being. This thing is so precise and so tiny that the size of the variable molecules is considered as huge as planets compared to it. With my current eye power, I can't see deep enough to detect it, so let's just call that thing DNA now. This DNA is the real culprit behind the design of the various species, while the variable molecules are merely intruders that change those characteristics, whether for the worse or the better. In short, destroying the variable molecules returns the organism to its standard form, its image that was determined by DNA. In your case, you have only returned to the true image that your DNA gave you, a human being. Robin then shook his head a few times. I know you want me to say that the human race is the original and that means that we are the best and that you now have secrets to examine or something like that, but unfortunately, you have not turned into the beloved race of the planet or become a mysterious entity that must be investigated. You were always human, but those variable molecules messed with your body and the bodies of all the Nahari giants and the rest of the races, making everyone believe that they were different races from humans. Jabba, I feel bad for stopping your dream, but you did not change your race. You only destroyed what gave you some additional advantages and returned to being a standard naked human. Then he laughed and smacked the dumbfounded Jabba on the shoulder. But cheer up! At least now we know the reason why humans exist on all the planets is that we are simply the naked version that is later improved by adding those variable molecules. This is a thread worth grasping since this kind impossible for these kinds of changes to be random. If you ask me who is doing this, I will say that the first culprit is the spirit of the planet, or at least the spirit of the planet knows the perpetrator for sure. The question is why? Oh. We also discovered the reason why humans always invent the internal energy system. That is, their bodies are pure, and there are no patterns playing hide and seek in there. This is why they are closest to natural energy. And it can be said that they are the clearest in mind and also the easiest target to be influenced by the spirit of the planet if it wants to grant special abilities to the human children in their mother's wombs, as happened in my case. As the human bodies are devoid of any complexity of laws and therefore easier for the planet spirit to add more special abilities to them. See? Your experiences have put us on a new path that we can now explore. So there is no need to be sad, hee. The Nahari giants were always
humans?
Jabba muttered in a low voice and leaned back with a dumbfounded face and lost in thought. It seemed as if he did not hear a word that Robin said after that line. Although his master's conclusion was not very far from his own, in the end, Robin's conclusion also says that humans are the origin of at least some intelligent creatures, but there is a difference between what he wanted to achieve and what Robin declared. Jabba really wanted to research the original blood of humans in order to discover more of the secrets of the universe, and he actually came to the same theory as Robin that there is something else that is actually responsible for determining the true specifications of each species. And during the 2 years that followed his battle with the warlord, he spent them trying to explore the original and unique human blood more deeply. But it turns out that he could have searched his own blood before the warlord's battle since he was also a human. Did all he really do was strip himself of the advantages given to him by the variable molecules of the Nahari giants? Isn't this like a man taking off his armor and weapons and entering the battlefield naked? Was all his research really for nothing? As for Robin, he did not interrupt him and let him face the truth. He had spent years pursuing something, but he was faced with a different truth. Even if it was only slightly different, it still changed all his dreams. He left him in his own world to copy reality. Then he returned to looking at the demon's blood container in silence. The variable molecules in the demon's blood do not form any patterns as they are only responsible for dismantling and devouring the blood of intelligent beings. Although he has not seen the demon's DNA, the lack of patterns in their blood that give the demons their peculiar features or appearance means, in one way or another, that this is the original form of their species. They are a true race, separate and different, completely independent from humans and demi-humans, yet for some reason, they seem to have been created to be the natural enemy of humanity. It's not as if Robin doesn't understand that demons have to eat. The rich individuals among humans and demi-humans spend a lot of money eating the meat of high-level beasts. There are even demi-humans who eat their own relatives like the Nahari giants do. A big reason for this is that it provides their affinity with natural energy and helps them create their solid energy foundations faster. Perhaps only yesterday, Robin would not have been able to answer why the meat of high-level beasts gave these benefits to humans, but the answer is available to him now. He saw with his own eyes all the subtle energy present in the blood of the beasts, and certainly, there is more and more in their meat and bones. What way could be better to get energy than eating it directly? Especially this kind of energy that has been broken down, refined, and easily absorbed. No wonder eating high-level meat gives this kind of benefits. But demons do not care about the energy in the body. Rather, they literally purify and expel it. They are chasing the human blood itself. Every step he took in this path of blood research made his heart clench more toward the demons. Sai Master, please tell me that I didn't waste the past years searching in vain. Jabba rubbed the area between his eyes and spoke in low spirits. Robin took his eyes off the demon's blood container and raised his eyebrows at Jabba. Are you an idiot? You have discovered a path of research that is no less important than research into heavenly laws. If you could control the movement and shape of those variable molecules in some way, there would be no disease that you cannot cure. There would be no race that you are powerless to destroy. These molecules clearly show you the strengths and weaknesses of all races. I can't even begin to count the number of applications we can use this knowledge for. Yes, we can create new races and begin the era of genetic engineering. The excitement returned to Jabba's face. Robin slapped his own forehead when he heard this. Did I say something wrong? Robin sighed. Create new races? Are you going to play the role of a mad scientist now, or do you think you have become a god? Get that idea out of your head already. Our job as researchers is to find facts and use them for the benefit of mankind and for some personal interests, of course, but we definitely cannot mess around in things we can't afford to mess with. Did you not stop for a moment to ask yourself what these molecules are in the first place and why they form these very precise patterns? Is this something that could come from nowhere or by pure coincidence? Did you think that those molecules created themselves one day and they held a closed meeting in which they decided they're going to create these patterns out of boredom? You are saying? Jabba raised his eyebrows slightly. I say not to mess with what you don't understand until we know what's going on around us. Robin waved and closed the topic. Jabba rubbed his head a little. He actually thought that those molecules were just mutations and that was it. Although he did not say this out loud, he still stuck to his opinion. Can I at least return a few people to their origins as happened to me? I want to observe the changes taking place as a bystander to get a better idea of the field. Robin laughed in a low voice. Although I have not tried it, I can imagine the amount of pain you went through while exploding all those variable molecules in your body and forcing that enormous energy to remain inside your body for more than half an hour until the process was completed. Tell me, how many people can repeat what did this? Jabba had no one to say it to. He held on all this time, firstly because he had the body of someone at the top of the dragon's realm, secondly because of his strong will to succeed, and thirdly because of his responsibility towards the 6th Legion and his fear that his death would drag them with him. If he hadn't managed to hold up that day, the resulting explosion would have been enough to wipe out the area and everyone in it. How many people can repeat this process? There are certainly a few people, but who would be willing to experience something like this? And why would they agree to transform into a human in the first place? Assuming that he captured a person and forced him to carry out this experiment, his consciousness would collapse due to the pain and loss of purpose, and a massive explosion would occur. Simply put, what happened to Jabba cannot be repeated again. After a little thought, Jabba breathed. Then allow me to continue the research in the field of blood. I want to improve the 2 techniques to achieve a better result that makes the transformation easier. You may, but do not limit your research to improving the 2 techniques only. Do not make the same mistake as me and limit your horizons with your own hand. Okay? Robin nodded with a smile. I would like to ask a favor from you as well. Consider it done. Jabba shouted and patted his chest. Robin laughed. Will you hear it first? I want you to choose a team of a few researchers, chemists, doctors, and anyone relatively famous in any kind of branch of science and have them help you in your research on blood. But I have other requests for you to do as well. First, you must collect or write all the books on the plants and resources on the 4 planets and recommend appropriate ways to use them. Secondly, develop a branch of making pills and drugs. Thirdly, I also want you to find a suitable way to use the corpses of the buds that we have collected instead of just turning them into food for the Draco. Robin felt happy as he said those words, to have a disciple representing him and a team researching together for the secrets of the universe. This was a dream come true. Recently, whenever he thinks about research that he has to do, he feels burdened, not because he hates research, on the contrary, this was the goal of his life, but because there are many things that he has to do quickly and he does everything on his own. But Jabba's recent appearance has lightened the heavy burden. The most difficult element of this mission will be gathering the right team. As for the 3 missions, they complement each other in a way. Jabba rubbed his chin for a few seconds. Give me 6 months and the team will be ready. But what about me leading the 6th Legion? We will find them a new general. Robin gave a short answer. All right then. Although Jabba felt some remorse about parting from the forces he had gathered and trained for years, in the end, this was not his dream and ultimate goal. If he wanted to fight and lead soldiers, he would not have followed Robin in the first place. Good. Robin tapped his thigh, then stood up and headed towards the tent door. Let's go. You've locked yourself in here long enough. Where are we going? Jabba quickly stood up and hurried after his teacher. A big smile appeared on Robin's face. We will go say hello to Hoffenheim, of course. The war has been long enough. In the middle of the Tree Father's Hoffenheim control circle. Boom. The northeast side needs support. The west is asking for support too. We need another team of life law users at the main battlefield. Kill. Today will be the last day of your lives. You damned humans. Under the roof of a tent open on all sides. Tisk, the headache started early today. Alexander looked at a giant tree trunk in front of him and mouthed displeasure. Everything he heard now, he heard it yesterday and the day before and the day before that. The scene before him was truly colorful and full of life, and death as well. Directly in front of him is a huge ring made up of millions of soldiers of the true beginning empire who look like a bunch of mercenaries. Some are wearing red coming from the Flame Continent, some are wearing green, they are the soldiers of the Holy Tree Continent, some are wearing silver, they are the soldiers of the Wind Continent, they are the soldiers of the Wind Continent, and others are wearing blue representing the soldiers of the Water Continent. Some even wear mismatched tribal clothing. They were the soldiers from the 3 local human tribes around Hoffenheim. Naturally, Fugon led his army, the 11th Legion, and came to offer support in the final battle against what was believed to be the main body of Hoffenheim. Even the 2 tribes of the Plains and Nightbirds, who were responsible for not only disturbing Hoffenheim's forces on the border, also decided to enter with a large part of their army. And this time it was not the 3 tribes' fight not only to impress Robin but to get rid of their number 1 enemy for hundreds of thousands of years. For them, this battle is a holy war that must be won at any cost, so how could they not do everything in their power? With just a few minutes of observation, it can be seen that the soldiers of the tribes are fighting while putting their lives on the line. The outcome of this battle means much more to them than it does to the soldiers of the true beginning empire. How not? If their side were victorious, they would get rid of an enemy that had exhausted them for 200,000 years, and Robin's invading army would find a place to settle away from them. But if they lose the battle, Treefather Hoffenheim will certainly take revenge by starting a war the likes of which have never heard of in history. Even the invader Robin and his army will turn their weapons towards the human tribes to snatch a piece of land for themselves. This war must be won, and there is no way to accept any other outcome. On top of the main body of the human side army, there are 20 squads behind them, each one made up of 10,000 soldiers. If Robin saw them now, he would be a little surprised because all the soldiers of these squads wear the distinctive golden full-body armor, and there are more than 200,000 of them in total. But of course, the production of this set of armor did not stop for a moment in the past 6 years, and Jura's factories are still sending more daily. At the head of each of the 20 corps is a well-known general, including Caesar, Peon, Victoria, and almost all the generals who had commanded an entire legion 2 years ago, and their assistants applied for the command of one of these corps consisting of only 10,000 soldiers. And yet, they did not receive any good time at that. The mission of these elite corps is to move freely from point to point throughout the siege area to cause some destruction or relieve the soldiers of the true beginning empire from the pressure for a few minutes, giving them time to breathe, or perhaps repel attacks coming from behind, and then move quickly to the next point. But what is strange is that with the presence of so many elites and veteran generals participating in this plan, it will be difficult to say what would happen if only one or two of these elite corps decided to take a break. As for within that vast circle of soldiers of the true beginning empire and allies, there are an infinite number of buds of various levels of strength, and from their abundance and cramming into one area, the ground over an area of several kilometers appeared as if it were covered in spilled milk. Just by looking at it, the number of buds can be estimated at more than 100 million, although most of the huge number of buds at the level of a sage or saint was killed over the years, and the remaining buds currently mostly range in strength between the energy foundation levels and knighthood. Over the past 2 years they have demonstrated their strength. They are a wall that cannot be crossed. Although these buds cannot achieve victory, they can easily break through one of the sides of the siege and escape. After all, although the difference in individual strength between the two parties is very large, the difference in numbers is also even more staggering. However, they did not try to escape but rather remained where they were, fighting to the death, refusing to move a step further from the giant tree behind them. In the middle of the sea of buds stands a giant tree, gigantic in every sense of the word. The area occupied by this single tree is enough to build a large city. If a stranger saw a single branch cut from that tree, he would say that that branch was a huge divine tree that lived for thousands of years. As for the height of that tree, no one has been able to measure it yet. Even if you looked up until your neck broke, you would not be able to see the tip of the tree. The only strange thing about this tree is that there is a huge thundercloud floating over the tree as lightning strikes it day and night. Although there is no massive damage to the tree, one can see the distance of the flame and some smoke can be seen far above. No one knew what this meant and no one cared much either since it didn't affect the battle, but Tree Father Hoffenheim is really a tree. When the unified army reached this point under the leadership of Alexander and was able to push the buds back again and again until they gathered here and was sure that this was the goal of their protection, that this was the Tree Father Hoffenheim, everyone felt awkward and some of them started to laugh stupidly. They were all waiting to see something like a warlord, a Trent creature that could move, attack, etc., but they were disappointed. Even though that enormous tree drops every day, a huge number of fruits quickly turn into buds and participate in the fight, making up for the lack of buds killed by their brothers all day long. But is the Tree Father really just a deaf tree? Although Father Tree used the empty-eyed buds' tongues to curse the army of the true beginning empire and tried to intimidate them every minute, the tree itself remained silent the whole time. That even Alexander and the rest of the Council of Generals thought that this was some kind of trick and that this was not Hoffenheim's real body, and that this tree is the main bud production center is something like this. But what if it's a fraud? The buds in front of them are real. When they eliminate all the buds, their mission as an army will be over and they will have to wait for orders from their emperor regarding everything else. But unfortunately, theories are different from reality. The gathering of more than 100 million buds here made implementing any plan to eliminate them quickly considered impossible, and even made breathing itself as heavy as ascending to the sky. The sky has also become a forbidden zone, not only for fear of lightning strikes from above but also for fear of concentrated attacks from below. In a compressed battle like this, whoever tries to fly from both sides will find countless attacks concentrated on him until he falls. So everyone committed to physical ground battles, which made the mission even more difficult. There is another problem they faced. After Emperor Robin's battle against the warlords, the army of the true beginning empire united and quickly marched towards Tree Father Hoffenheim to get rid of it while he's still treating the damage it received in the battle. So they did not clean up after themselves or search for areas that produced buds and destroy them like they used to do before. So, every few days, the buds that have not yet entered the siege gather and attack them from behind. In front of him are more than 100 million buds, and their number is almost constant because that huge tree produces more of them. Meanwhile, behind them they face waves of buds on an almost daily basis, and had it not been for the presence of the free golden cores, they would not have been able to confront them. At this point, Alexander did not know if he was the one besieging the Tree Father or vice versa. General Alexander, we have a needy situation on the northern flank that requires your decision. A person wearing silver appeared next to Alexander at this moment. What's wrong? Alexander replied slowly, his eyes still focused on the giant tree in front of him. There was no longer any need to be surprised or worried by urgent reports. After the current situation had continued for such a long period, whatever report he was going to hear now, he had certainly heard something similar during the past 2 years. The wind reconnaissance team detected a large gathering of buds just 10 kilometers northward. Their number has reached more than 4 million buds at this moment and is still growing. According to the report, there are signs that they have already begun to move toward us. The soldier spoke quickly. 4 million. Alexander narrowed his eyebrows slightly, but he wasn't really surprised. This type of big wave happens once every few months and is the most annoying thing they have to face. The reason is that the siege of more than 100 million buds around the huge tree has made the defense lines of the soldiers of the true beginning empire become extremely thin. In a single day, the siege would be breached more than once before one of the elite Golden Corps comes and forces the buds to retreat. This is also the reason that prevents Alexander from giving orders to divide part of the army to search for and destroy the clusters of buds around them. He knows that the Tree Father in using the blank-eyed buds to gather the other stray buds and form these waves. He knows that the only way to stop it will be to search and burn every singed breeding ground and kill every single wandering bud. But how can he? He needed more soldiers, so how could he abandon any one of them? Under these circumstances and the terrible shortage in numbers, what would happen if millions of buds attacked from behind? The second reason is that soldiers need rest too. Although the army soldiers had all become veterans after the 6-year war and could consume the least amount of energy to cause the greatest possible amount of damage, this did not make them immune to fatigue. The army is divided into 2 halves. One half advances to engage the buds for a day, and the other half retreats to the back lines to get some sleep and use energy stones to regain its strength. Every time there is a major attack on the rear rows that are already tired, the number of casualties would be double the usual, and assuming that those rear rows were strong enough and deterred the incoming attack. The biggest problem is that now you will have the front and rear rows all exhausted, and the number of deaths would only increase more and more in the next few days. So when Alexander heard the report, he knew that today was one of those days that would not go well, so he gave a big sigh, then put his helmet on his head and took out 2 slim swords. It was clear that he was ready to fight himself. No need to panic. Tell everyone that we will start activating Plan C. Plan C was simply to declare a state of emergency in the entire army and turn everyone to defense only. Then send half of the elite forces towards the north to help confront the upcoming attack. Of course, all of these are just means to mitigate the damage a little to the army, but several thousand deaths will inevitably fall today.
Plan C?
This sounds mysterious, but there's no need to do something like this. At this moment, Alexander heard a familiar voice that brought a smile directly to his face. Your Excellency? Alexander looked around like a madman until he spotted Robin and Jabba about to land next to him. So he fell to one knee. Hail the Emperor of the True Beginning! At this moment, Alexander seemed excited but not surprised at all. In fact, the news about Robin's awakening actually came to him a full day ago, but he did not have time to return for a visit and certainly would not be scoundrel enough to immediately ask for help from His Excellency, who had been bedridden for 2 years. Robin nodded at him. Get up! After leaving Jabba's tent, Robin went to the headquarters and heard everything he had to hear about the war taking place before he decided to come. Even though he had just arrived, he already had an idea of the situation no less than Alexander himself. We have disappointed you and obstructed your glorious path. Everyone here was happy with the news of your Excellency's awakening, but they were afraid to stand in front of you. Please understand that I am the absolute general here and all decisions and strategies were my sole responsibility. Please give me your punishment. Alexander spoke while still kneeling on one knee. After his initial enthusiasm, his heart trembled when he remembered that Robin had ordered Plan C not to be implemented. Isn't that enough to express his anger at his war management? Or that's what he thought because he himself was disappointed was his results for the past 2 years. If 2 years were enough to end a battle against an entity like this, humans would not have lived on this planet in fear for hundreds of thousands of years. What you have accomplished is considered a big enough achievement. Robin smiled and took a few steps, then extended his hand to pull Alexander up. My only reproach to you is that you have exhausted the army so much with this endless siege, and that you could have done this in a better way with fewer casualties. But I think again and tell myself that you have gained us a veteran army that has been fighting life and death battles day and night over the course of years. An army that can sweep its way in any situation in any planet. But what you said before. Alexander slowly stood up and returned to standing in front of Robin like a son standing in front of one of his ancestors. Previously, Alexander was serving as general for Robin because of the oath he took on the Great Green Hill, which of course was caused by his fear of the fearful demon army. But he did not fear Robin himself. Of course, Victoria, Old Goo, and the rest of the higher-ups on 4 continents shared the same line of thoughts. But the tales spread by the 6th Legion about the battle against the 6 warlords were enough to shake everyone's being and make them reevaluate the person they had been forced to swear allegiance to. What I said, you mean about stopping Plan C? Oh, I just meant that there is no need to defend anymore. Robin waved and then looked at the massive tree in front of him with his golden eyes. Waiting to kill all those buds will take years and might never end. So why not destroy the source directly? Destroy the source? You mean attacking that tree directly? Alexander shook his head after hearing Robin's words. I'm sorry for saying that, but I'm afraid it's easier said than done in this case. Reaching that damn tree is impossible without completely eliminating the buds. Oh? I was also wondering why you didn't think of something like this before. But it seems like you tried. This makes me curious. What's stopping you from aiming directly at the tree trunk? Robin raised his eyebrows slightly. Please let me show you. It will be easier to explain that way. Alexander bowed slightly, then took a few steps forward until he maintained a safe distance away from Robin. Then opened his hands wide as if he was about to hug someone, then quickly closed them with a clap that sounded like a clap of thunder for miles around. Alexander's quick movement sent a wind blade upward toward the trunk. Although his movement seemed random and fast without preparation, it was an offensive technique that he had trained thousands of times until he mastered it, and it contained all of his strength. Due to the intensity of the air pressure in the wind blade and the extreme force of the blade that separates it from the air surrounding it, the blade can now be seen with the naked eye. This is, of course, if your eye is fast enough to see the blade. Even Robin and Jabba had some difficulty moving their eyes fast enough to follow the path of the blade of wind. But what happened next was strange. The buds in the path of the wind blade started jumping over each other until they formed a small hill very quickly and stood in front of the incoming blade. The wind blade was so powerful that it immediately split the mound of bodies in half and continued on its way. But along the way, the blank-eyed sages and saints and even the knights within the buds were grabbing the ordinary buds next to them and throwing them towards the path of the blade. The distance between Alexander and the tree trunk was not short at all. After all, there were tens of millions of buds standing between them, and during this long path that the blade traveled, it killed several thousands of buds until most of its strength was consumed. In the end, when the wind blade collided with the trunk, the blade shattered. Simply put, not a single scratch was left on the trunk of the giant tree. Death to the invaders! The blank-eyed buds in the area in front of Alexander shouted at the top of their lungs. Then they led the buds to put pressure on the siege in that area, broke it easily, and began to push their way towards Alexander to punish him. But at this moment, 2 elite Golden Corps came and crushed the buds who broke the siege and forced them to retreat. The situation quickly returned to normal. Interesting. Robin whistled lowly as he raised his eyebrows. No wonder the army's powerhouses have given up on attacking the tree trunk directly. This is really useless. If they wanted to kill the ordinary buds, they could focus on killing them in sieges instead than to waste their strength on long-range attacks. The biggest problem is the resilience of the huge tree trunk. Even if the strength of the wind blade dropped greatly on the way, it was still a wind blade that was fired from the hand of someone with the strength of a half-step martial emperor. Even after being weakened by that much, it should still be able to split a low-level sage in half, but it still somehow did not leave a single scratch on the trunk. Do you want to try your luck? Robin looked behind him with a meaningful smile and pointed at the tree trunk. Me? The result won't be better than General Alexander. Jabba laughed and shook his head. Robin raised his hand and slapped Jabba on the back of the head. All right, we both know that's not the truth. Did you think you would hide something like that from your master's eyes? I've been monitoring the changes in your body since the moment I entered the tent door. Jabba scratched the back of his head with an embarrassed smile. I don't mean to hide anything, but my body has changed and I can no longer determine my level of strength. I just wanted to warm up a little before I embarrass myself in front of you. And I don't want to be the center of attention right now. Why do you think like that? Do you think this will bring you peace in your research or something? This is stupidity. If you want peace, you have to be strong to keep it. If anyone spots weakness in you, they will try to test you further, and that will really disturb what you are doing. This is why you have to show off a little even if you don't want to fight the battles yourself. You have to show your strength when your soldiers know that their backs are protected. Their hands will hit harder. Come on, test your new strength. Where can you find a better sandbag than this? He laughed and did not add another word. Even Alexander, who had retreated to stand next to them again, did not know what was going on. Why did His Excellency think that Jabba would do better than him? I think you're right, as you wish then. Jabba cracked his neck left and right with his hands, then said some simple stretches to his shoulder. Then he took a step forward with his left foot and extended his right arm backward. Come on, baby! Then he shot it forward with all his might as if it were a bullet. Boom! The next moment, another explosion was heard behind the lines of the buds. When everyone looked at the location of the second explosion, they found a circle 40 meters in diameter and 10 meters deep on the trunk of the tree. The trunk of the huge tree has been damaged. The battlefield, which had been burning for 2 years, fell into a frightening silence at this moment. Everyone looked to the other side to see the perpetrator. After the dust settled, they found that the command tent had been blown away due to the pressure of the wind. They found Jabba in an attack position, with Robin standing next to him, smiling, and Alexander, who appeared to be so amazed that he could fit 5 eggs into his mouth. It's the 6th General. His Excellency. His Excellency is here. Father, you came? Long live the true beginning empire. Long live the true beginning empire. The human side in this battle finally gained some enthusiasm for the first time in 2 years, and their morale reached sky high with one movement. Even the Fugon and the locals raised their weapons and shouted excitedly along with the soldiers of the true beginning emperor before they returned to the battle again with tremendous momentum. In the blink of an eye, the death toll doubled and the rows of buds were pushed back again. This power! What kind of power is this? Alexander let out a long exhale and muttered. This was the first time he had seen power beyond the limits of the Sage Realm. After all, he had never seen a warlord himself, and the Tree Father hadn't made a move himself yet. As for Robin, he nodded without surprise. Nice. Even though he has not yet entered the low-level Emperor realm, he definitely has the power of one. Jabba has become a martial emperor? Exclaimed Alexander. This was tremendous news. As for Jabba, he let out a long sigh. He really did not want to reveal his newly acquired strength at the moment. As he sees it, it is better for him not to reveal anything at all until he enters the path of the truth and lays the foundations for himself. And for this to happen, it is better for him not to participate in any conflicts or for anyone to depend on him like they used to. But it seems that this dream will no longer be available. In fact, obtaining this power was not something that was planned by Jabba, but rather because of the enormous explosive force resulting from the explosion of the variable molecules, which he forced to remain inside his body for half an hour using the energy trapping technique. Part of that tremendous power was exploited by Jabba, and he used his energy collection area as a medium to activate one of the law of gravity techniques, the one he used to almost crush the warlord who possessed strength almost equivalent to a mid-level emperor. But what about the rest of the energy that could not find a way out in time and had to stay inside his body for half an hour? It destroyed and then polished his muscles, internal organs, and even his bones. Even though he had not been broken through in terms of the internal system, he was still a sage, and he had not broken through in terms of the body strengthening system either because he still had the 3rd level body strengthening divine tattoo. He found himself with this raging power anyway. What Jabba was exposed to was not the same as using patterns to strengthen the body in a certain way and over long periods of time, and what he gained in the end is also completely different from a low-level Nahari Emperor. His current strength is not the result of building solid energy levels, and it is not the result of the accumulation of energy in the muscles and bones. It was simply because his flesh and bones had become too tough after undergoing this kind of violent refinement. Although he will not be able to gain any more strength until his internal training system or body strength system develops, this once-in-a-lifetime refinement has undoubtedly given him benefits that will remain with him throughout his life. His physical strength now in his human body is no less than ever before. His body is much stronger than Nahari Giant on the same level. In other words, he gained more advantages than he had when he still got the Nahari Giant's variable molecules. This is amazing, haha. With an Emperor on our side, we will definitely be able to destroy the buds and that damn tree. Alexander laughed and declared. Some envy struck Alexander's heart for a moment after he realized that the position of the strongest in the army was no longer his. But soon fighting spirit flared up in his heart and replaced his envy. Without some hurdles and new goals, how would life have any flavor? But at the same time, Alexander had no hatred towards Jabba in his heart. This was simply what could be expected from the Emperor and his disciple. What he needs to do now is to find a way to get past him again. Robin shook his head after another glance at the giant tree. This is going to take a very long time. Hoofy's not going to stand by and watch his body crumble after taking several hundred punches like that. Although the damage caused by Jabba is enormous in everyone's eyes, it simply looks like child's play when compared to the size of the tree's trunk. If he continued attacking day and night in the same way, he might be able to topple the tree after a few months. But will all those buds give him the opportunity to attack for a few months without harassment? Pipe dream. Leaving aside that they will march where Jabba is, it was unknown if the Tree Father still has any weapon in his arsenal that he hasn't used, something like that thunderstorm for example. If he still has something like that, then Jabba will be very unlike for sure. Your Excellency, is this tree really Tree Father Hoffenheim? Alexander asked. This question was on the minds of many. Haha, of course this is his real body. How can I not recognize my favorite plant on sight? Robin laughed loudly, then looked and patted Jabba on the shoulder. Go to the northern front and help the guys there confront the attack coming from behind. Do not delay. All right. Jabba nodded, then took a step and disappeared. Alexander, get me a blank-eyed bud. A shiver ran down Alexander's spine when he saw the smile on Robin's face. But he wasted no time and then grabbed a random saint-level blank-eyed bud. The blank-eyed bud tried a lot to evade Alexander's forceful seizure, but to no avail. When Hoffenheim was about to withdraw his consciousness from this bud and direct it to another one, he found a face he knew well standing in front of him. He forgot that he was being arrested and stared into Robin's eyes with clear anger and hatred. The damned Robin Burton! I was wondering how long you would be hiding in your little tent. You really thought that those bunny humans were going to do anything to me? You are dreaming. Your presence here will only serve my purpose to kill you. I have to admit, fighting those dolls you call warlords was a bit annoying and made me sleep a little. But that wasn't a problem at all. I'm stronger than ever before, as you will see. Robin laughed with a laugh full of provocation. Oh, right, why don't you make a doll or two for me? I want to try something on them. The previous 6 were destroyed far too fast. The blank-eyed bud wanted to jump on Robin and shred him apart with his teeth. His deep hatred made him forget that Alexander was holding him. Robin did not care about the blank-eyed bud's reaction and continued after placing his hand on his mouth. Did I say something wrong? Oh right, I almost forgot. One of the other Tree Fathers said the other day that you used all your planet spirit refinement to make those little dolls, which means you can't make them anymore, right? Meaning you didn't just lose your so-called warlords forever, but you also lost the refinement competition with the rest of the Tree Fathers. That is, of course, not to mention losing more than half of your buds and the lands that you accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years. Tsk, damn, this is very disappointing indeed. No wonder you are that angry. What are you even still struggling for? Just let my boys slay you already. I am alive to kill you. Do you hear me? I will kill you without a doubt and use your invading army as the foundation of my new empire. Not one of you will leave this world alive. The blank-eyed bud shouted again. Robin's words were clearly striking a chord. Robin pretended to look around anxiously. This is what you say, but why don't I feel afraid? Why didn't you do anything while being trapped like a mad dog for 2 years? I don't want to underestimate you, but honestly, I don't think you're capable of being a threat right now, don't you? When I woke up and heard that the rest of the Tree Fathers had not sent reinforcements to you or even sent armies to destroy you, I knew that your fate had been decided. Even your equals, with whom you had spent your life in conditional friendship, no longer saw you as an ally or even an enemy. They simply saw you as a pile of trash waiting to be burned. Your fate is sealed in their eyes that they forgot you even existed. You say you are going to kill me? Man, say something sensible, will you? I'm going to kill you. I'm going to rip you apart. Ah! The blank-eyed bud raised its head and screamed until his lungs nearly exploded. In the blink of an eye, the rest of the blank-eyed buds in the army began to shout, and the approximately 100 million buds began to advance to where Robin was standing,